Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I used to treat the eldest miss of the Sue family like a mere toy, even forcing her to call me daddy. But 10 years later, on the very day Sue Zixi was supposed to study abroad, I suddenly awakened my future memories. Realizing my family would be utterly destroyed by her revenge due to my past cruelty, I immediately swore to stay as far away from her as possible. Yet, when I saw an assassin charging at her with a blade, my body moved on pure instinct. A cold gleam flashed and Sue Zixi's vision was instantly dyed a horrifying crimson. As the man in black ripped his knife free and fled, the frantic bodyguards gave chase, but I could only collapse helplessly into Sue Zixi's trembling arms. Her heartbeat seemingly stopped as she forced down her panic, desperately dragging me into the car and screaming at the driver. "Hurry! Drive to the hospital right now!" My face grew terrifyingly pale, the last traces of warmth slowly slipping from my body. Sue Zixi, I need to tell you something," I whispered, my voice incredibly weak. Trembling, she shook her head, crying out, "Save it for the hospital. If we wait until the hospital, it'll be too late." The excruciating pain blurred my vision, my consciousness being ripped away by an invisible hand. Using every last ounce of my fading strength, I forced the words out. "I'm so sorry about your father's death, but it truly was a nurse's tragic mistake. Please don't blame the Shao family." Her voice cracked with desperate sobs. "I won't. I promise I won't make things difficult for them." A pale, relieved smile finally broke across my blood-stained face. "Then, you have to keep your word." Her heart clenched with suffocating agony. "I keep my word. Just please, stop talking." After that, I never spoke again, lying silently in her embrace. When my father, Xiao Kang'an, received the news, it was like a bolt of lightning struck his very soul. By the time he and my sister Xiao Jiro rushed to the hospital, I was already undergoing emergency resuscitation in the ICU. Sue Zixi stood outside the doors like a soulless puppet, entirely frozen. Her face violently snapped to the side as Xiao Jiro delivered a vicious ringing slap. "This is all your fault. You killed my brother." Sue Zixi didn't utter a single word, just standing there numbly. As Jiro raised her hand to strike again, my father grabbed her arm with a heavy sigh. He had already heard everything from the bodyguards, and the thought that his son might actually die this time made his unstoppable tears fall. This ruthless titan of the business world, a man who never flinched in the face of absolute despair, now sat slumped on a hospital bench, looking as helpless as a child. Meanwhile, inside the cold walls of the intensive care unit, my consciousness slowly flickered back to life. Seeing me stir, the nurse's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. "Young Master Xiao, you're awake." I blinked in a dazed stupor, scanning the sterile room. "Where am I?" "You're in the ICU. You were stabbed and just got out of a massive surgery." All the terrifying memories suddenly flooded back into my mind. "Am I going to die?" I croaked. The nurse gave a reassuring smile. "The most critical phase has passed. In a few days, you can transfer to a regular ward." I froze. I wasn't going to die? But wait, would Sue Zixi take back her promise if I survived? A crazy idea sparked in my mind. "Nurse," I rasped out weakly, "please bring my father in here, and make absolutely sure no one else comes inside." Outside the ICU, Sue Zixi sat rigidly on the bench, her face completely drained of color. The nurse hurriedly stepped out and broke the silence. "Young Master Xiao is awake. He's asking for CEO Xiao." Xiao Kang'an instantly leaped up, practically stumbling as he threw himself into the ward. Sue Zixi stiffly rose to her feet, instinctively stepping forward to follow, but Xiao Jiro ruthlessly blocked her path. "My brother only wants to see our father. He didn't even ask for me, his own sister. You think you're going in there? Keep dreaming." Sue Zix's trembling lips parted, but in the end, she couldn't utter a single sound. A few agonizing minutes later, Xiao Kang'an walked back out, his face heavily shrouded in dark grief. Jiru immediately rushed up to him. "Dad, what did Chunan say?" Xiao Kang'an cast a deeply complicated, sorrowful look toward Sue Zixi. "He didn't say much, just told us not to worry." Then he slowly walked over to the bench and sat down, bowing his head in silence. He was lying. Late that night, the heart monitor inside the ICU suddenly erupted into a terrifying, high-pitched alarm. Frantic shouts from doctors and nurses immediately echoed down the hallway as I was violently pushed back into the emergency operating room. But this time, I never woke up. The blade was simply too close to the patient's heart. "I'm sorry, we did everything we could." The doctor's words struck like a merciless thunderbolt, shattering Sue Zixi's heart into a million irreparable pieces. Xiao Kang'an stood there numbly, his eyes vacant. A stark white sheet now completely covered my face. As Sue Zixi's trembling hand reached out, desperate to see me one last time, Jiro viciously shoved her away. "You killed my brother. And you still have the nerve to look at him?" Sue Zixi remained utterly speechless, watching as the Xiao family surrounded the lifeless body on the hospital bed and slowly rolled it away. In that agonizing moment, it felt like something inside her very soul had died right along with me. The shocking news of the Xiao family's eldest young master perishing spread like wildfire. The whole world knew that I had sacrificed my own life to protect Sue Zixi, completely disregarding my own safety. Gossip media aggressively dug into our past, exposing everything. How I had given up my dream of studying medicine just for her. how I had charged in to save her when she was besieged by reporters, how the Shao family had unconditionally delivered a massive 4 billion check when the Su family faced bankruptcy. Reading these explosive headlines, my assistant Yang Wei couldn't hold back his tears. As an insider, he had watched me relentlessly chase after Su Zixi for years, and he had seen exactly how I was met with nothing but coldness and brutal rejection. Xiao Chunan had treated Su Zixi far better than the internet even knew, but Yang Wei was the only one who held these secrets, simply because I had strictly forbidden him from revealing the truth. But now that I was dead, there was absolutely no reason to hide the past from her anymore. He vividly remembered the time I visited her company, only to be met with her icy indifference. I left that day and never sought her out again, but behind the scenes I went straight to Yang Wei. I handed him a master list of influential contacts, stating confidently that these top companies would never refuse to work with her. Along with that priceless list came a staggering $300 million gold card, yet I explicitly ordered him to never let her know. The brutal truth was, without the massive influx of clients and capital brought in by Xiao Chunan, her company's rapid expansion would have been completely impossible, and Su Zixi would have never risen to power. So incredibly fast. With a voice choked with heavy grief, Yang Wei revealed every single secret to her. Xiao Chunan helped you from the shadows, and now he's even thrown his life away just to protect you. Whatever grudges you held against the Xiao family, let them end here. Su Zixi's icy eyes suddenly hollowed out into pure empty despair. Yang Wei didn't know the terrifying truth. She never actually had a grudge against the Xiao family. It was all a tragic misunderstanding on her part, a catastrophic misjudgment of my feelings. My funeral was kept strictly low-key. The Xiao family intentionally excluded her, but my cousin, Bai Ruanan, couldn't resist making a secret phone call. She knew just how deeply I had loved her, thinking that perhaps, in death, I would still want her there. Yet, the moment Su Zixi appeared at the somber cemetery, Xiao Zhiro commanded the bodyguards to throw her out. But surprisingly, Xiao Kang'an raised his hand to stop them. If she is willing to send Chunan off, then let her be here for his final journey. As the mournful music began to play, Xiao Kang'an gently cradled his son's ashes, lowering the urn carefully into the cold grave. As the heavy marble lid sealed shut with a dreadful thud, the absolute last trace of my existence in this world was buried forever. Long after every single mourner had abandoned the cemetery, Su Zixi remained there, standing like a frozen statue before my tombstone. When the very first ray of dawn pierced the sky and landed on the marble, her trembling fingers gently caressed my smiling photo. "Chunan," she whispered, tears finally breaking free, "I am willing to use the rest of my long, wretched life to repay the love you gave me." Meanwhile, on the exact opposite side of the country, at the bustling Beicheng airport, Xiao Kang'an was nervously fussing over me. "I told you to rest and recover for a while before leaving, but you just wouldn't listen to your old man." Hearing his nagging, I could only let out an awkward, sheepish laugh. Beside him, my cousin Bai Ruanan wiped away genuine tears. "Brother, how could you fake your own death and not even tell me? Do you have any idea how many tears I shed for you?" I smirked, shaking my head. "If I told you, my flawless plan would have completely failed. Knowing you, you wouldn't have shed a single tear at the funeral, and you'd probably be secretly grinning the entire time." Ruan pouted, looking incredibly wronged. "Well, you still shouldn't have made me suffer like a walking corpse for an entire month. I didn't even know how to function anymore." Just as she had been completely drowning in the suffocating grief of her beloved cousin's tragic death, her phone suddenly rang with an impossible caller ID. When I called her telling her to come send me off at the airport, Bai Ruanan genuinely thought she was having a psychotic break. It wasn't until my familiar voice casually echoed through the speaker, "Little Nan, it's me, I'm not dead," that she frantically bolted straight for the terminal. After saying my final goodbyes to my family, the plane finally roared into the sky, leaving Beicheng far behind. Staring out the window as the towering skyscrapers shrank into tiny specks, an indescribable sense of absolute relief washed over my soul, mixed with a faint spark of anticipation for my new life. Meanwhile, back in the city I left behind, Su Zixi felt terrifyingly ill. When she finally recovered, it was as if her entire soul had been replaced. Her behavior, her temper, her very aura, everything became completely ruthless and utterly unpredictable. In the freezing silence of early morning, Su Zixi gently placed a bouquet of fresh flowers before my grave, tears welling in her eyes as she stared at my eternally smiling photograph. 5 entire years had passed. Xiao Chunan's life had permanently stopped 5 years ago. If that horrible accident hadn't happened, if he knew that she had secretly fallen in love with him long before he died, would he still have loved her back? As she finally walked out of the cemetery, her close friend Li Yuan was already waiting at the gates. "The famous doctor my dad recommended has finally been contacted. I had my secretary book tickets to Jiangcheng for tomorrow morning. I'll go with you." Su Zixi silently nodded. But suddenly her footsteps faltered, and she tilted her head up to gaze at the vast empty sky. Back then, Xiao Chunan's dream was to study medicine. If he were still alive today, he would definitely be a brilliant chief surgeon by now. Meanwhile, miles away, a frantic nurse chased down a man on the phone. "Dr. Xiao, the surgical patient in bed 8 just woke up." Hearing this, I gave a sharp nod and quickly spoke into the receiver. "Gotta go, little Nan. I'm swamped. Yunshi restaurant, 12:30 sharp, don't be late. Hanging up, I immediately followed the nurse to bed 8. Only after thoroughly checking the patient's vitals did I finally return to my office. Right on cue, my colleague Lindsay Chen walked over, already changed into his casual clothes, ready to drag me to the cafeteria. I'm skipping lunch with you guys today. Got 2 friends visiting from out of town, I grinned, pointing a thumb toward the adjacent office where loud, peaking opera music was blasting. Seriously though, why hasn't old man Huo gone to eat yet? He's blasting his opera again. Zicheng glanced at the director's door. Word is, some massive corporate big shot flew in from another city just to see director Huo. He's been waiting in there all morning. I nodded dismissively. Endless streams of people came to see old man Huo, and the title corporate big shot meant absolutely nothing to me. After all, my own father and sister were terrifying titans of the business world. Seeing it was almost time, I packed up and headed downstairs. But before I even stepped out of the hospital doors, my phone buzzed with Ruin's furious voice. Seriously? What kind of garbage place did your friend book? I can't find a single parking spot at this stupid Yungshi restaurant. I chuckled, walking briskly. Just circle the block a bit. The food there is completely authentic. Your big bro just wanted you to taste the local specialty. At that exact moment, separated by a single wall of blooming cherry blossoms, Li Yuan and Su Zixi were walking straight toward the hospital building. Hearing that effortlessly familiar laugh, Su Zixi's footsteps violently halted, her head snapping aggressively toward the other side of the wall. A figure was walking hurriedly away. Su Zixi practically sprinted around the cherry blossom wall, her heart hammering in her chest. But all that greeted her was the soft rustle of pink petals in the breeze. The familiar silhouette was completely gone. Yuan caught up, panting in confusion. Zixi! Why did you suddenly sprint off like a madwoman? Su Zixi slowly pulled back her desperate gaze, her voice terrifyingly hollow. It's nothing. That voice, that familiar laugh, it had to be her broken mind playing tricks on her again. Meanwhile, at the Yunshi restaurant parking lot, Bai Ruanan had been circling for half an hour before finally spotting an open space. But just as she shifted gears, a sleek Mercedes violently cut across her bumper and aggressively stole her spot. Furious, Ruanan slammed her door open and pounded on the driver's window. What the hell is your problem? Couldn't you see I was backing in? The window smoothly rolled down, revealing a handsome, arrogant face. You were hovering in front of the spot for ages, doing nothing. I honestly thought you didn't want it, he sneered. Ruanan's blood boiled. Who said I didn't want it? The man let out a mockingly exaggerated gasp of realization. Oh, so it's not that you didn't want to park. You just have absolutely garbage driving skills and couldn't back in. Ruanan's face darkened into pure murderous rage. You broke the rules and stole my spot. Move your damn car right now. The man confidently slammed his door shut, leaning against the hood. You're pretty enough, but you completely lack manners. Haven't you ever heard of ladies first? Ruan was utterly flabbergasted by his twisted, shameless logic. For a pathetic excuse of a man like you, why the hell should I act like a lady? The man's arrogant smirk vanished, his brows furrowing sharply. What kind of man am I? Say that again. It's a public spot, you blocked traffic for 10 minutes, and now you have the nerve to blame me? Ruan's temper exploded like a powder keg. She delivered a brutal, merciless kick straight into the door of his precious Mercedes. Then, without even sparing him a second glance, she stormed back to her car, slammed the gas pedal, and peeled away in a cloud of exhaust. The man stood there completely, utterly dumbfounded. If you're psycho, go to a hospital. Why take it out on my car? A few minutes later, I casually strolled into the restaurant, only to find my good friend Gao Yihan sitting at a table, his face flushed red with absolute sheer fury. Bro, what happened to you? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I had the absolute worst luck today. I met this crazy psycho chick. She blocked a parking spot for 10 minutes, and when I took it, she screamed at me to move. When I refused, she actually kicked my car. Wow, people like that actually exist? That's insane. I laughed just as I turned my head toward the entrance. I spotted Bai Ruanan walking in. I immediately waved her over to introduce them. Seeing her favorite cousin Ruan happily skipped over. But the second Gao Yihan saw her face, his expression contorted as if he had just seen a demon from hell. Oblivious, I casually gestured to her. Weren't you here ages ago? How are you later than me and Yihan? Ugh, don't even ask, brother. Ruan rolled her eyes dramatically. I ran into a massive idiot on the way and wasted my time. Hearing this, Gao Yihan violently slammed his hands on the table and leaped up. Who the hell are you calling an idiot? Ruanan didn't even flinch. She elegantly picked up a glass of water, took a calm sip, and smirked. Whoever just yelled at me, that's the idiot. Gao Yihan's face turned a horrifying shade of blue. Chunan, are you seeing this psycho? I watched the chaotic scene unfold, feeling both furious and incredibly amused. They were usually such rational people, how did they instantly become mortal enemies? Helplessly, I spent the entire agonizing meal acting as their referee. Meanwhile, back in the quiet sanctuary of the hospital, Director Huo meticulously reviewed Su Zixi's thick medical file. Miss Su, ever since your friend passed away, you've suffered from severe insomnia, which then escalated into these crippling migraines. Is that correct? Yun aggressively nodded her head. Yes, exactly. At her absolute worst, she stayed awake for 10 days and nights straight. Director Huo's expression instantly grew heavy and extremely grave. Miss Su, your situation is highly complex. To put it bluntly, this is a sickness of the heart. Su Zi slowly raised her hollow eyes to the doctor. He was right. It was a disease of the heart, but the only medicine that could ever cure her was already dead and buried. Yuan, however, looked at the doctor with desperate blazing hope. Can it still be cured? Director Huo stroked his chin in deep thought. Let's do this. I'll prescribe some specialized medication for you to take back home. Take it for a full 3-month cycle. If there isn't any significant improvement by then, I'm afraid I might be completely powerless to help you. Su Zizi wasn't surprised by this grim verdict in the slightest. She merely stood up with a chilling deadpan expression. Thank you, Dr. Huo. Let's go, Yuan. Just as she was leaving, I had returned from the restaurant realizing I only had exactly 3 minutes before my afternoon shift began. The second Lin Zicheng spotted me, he sprinted over like a madman. Bro, I just saw that corporate big shot. Holy crap, she is insanely gorgeous. I couldn't help but laugh at his desperation. You literally say every woman is gorgeous. No, I swear on my life. Zicheng frantically waved his hands. She is goddess-level beautiful. If you don't believe me, just wait till she walks out of the director's office. I chuckled, brushing him off. Sure. I need to change my clothes first. My shift is starting. In the exact fraction of a second that I stepped into the locker room and shut the door, Su Zixi and her entourage walked out into the hallway. Lin Zicheng's eyes nearly popped out of his skull as he stared at her absolute beauty. He kept frantically glancing back at the locker room door, screaming internally, Chunan, hurry up and get out here. But safely locked inside, changing my scrubs, I couldn't hear his desperate prayers. Once again, the threads of fate slipped right past each other. The very next day at the Zhangcheng airport, Ruanan had to fly back to Beicheng for work, so I accompanied her to the security checkpoint. Nearby, a little girl was happily sprinting around with a colorful pinwheel. But the very next second, her foot slipped, and she violently crashed onto the hard floor, immediately bursting into loud, terrified sobs. Ruanan rushed over, gently scooping the crying girl into her arms to comfort her, while I picked up the fallen pinwheel and placed it back into the child's tiny hands. Not far away, preparing to board her own flight, Su Zixi was drawn by the commotion. She glanced over and in the very next instant, her entire body completely froze. That back. That devastatingly familiar back. It was a perfect mirror image of Xiao Chunan. Su Zixi's face instantly warped in sheer disbelief. She shoved violently through the dense crowd, sprinting desperately toward the exact spot the man had been standing. Yet, by the time she finally shoved her way to the front, only Bai Ruanan was left, softly comforting the tearful little girl. Su Zixi desperately dug her nails into her palms, trying to forcefully suppress the violent trembling of her voice. Xiao Chunan, where is he? Ruanan looked up, her face twisting into a mix of pure confusion and sudden hostility. CEO Su, am I hearing things? You of all people should know exactly where my brother is. You of all people should know his ashes are in Beicheng. Su Zixi took a sharp, agonizing breath, ignoring her venom entirely. She dropped down to one knee in front of the little girl, her eyes wide with frantic hope. Sweetheart, the big brother who just handed you this pinwheel, where did he go? The little girl shrank back, terrified by the crazy look in Su Zixi's eyes. No, there was no big brother. The big sister picked it up for me. Su Zixi felt as if a heavy sledgehammer had just smashed directly into her brain. Ruanan might lie to her face, but a child this young couldn't possibly weave such a flawless lie. Was her absolute obsession so sickeningly deep that she was hallucinating again? Standing beside her, Yuan Yen grabbed her arm in sheer panic. Zixi? What the hell is wrong with you? Before Su Zixi could even formulate a single word, Ruan sneered in utter disgust. The kid tripped, I picked her up, and I gave her the toy. Are you truly losing your damn mind, Su Zixi? But CEO Su insists she saw my brother holding that pinwheel, Ruanan said, rolling her eyes. Li Yun cast a deeply complicated look at Su Zixi. Had her mental condition truly deteriorated this much? Thinking this, she forced an apologetic smile at Ruanan. I'm so sorry, Zixi has just been completely exhausted lately. She must have seen things. But Su Zixi absolutely refused to give up, her eyes narrowing sharply. Why exactly did you come to Zhangcheng? Ruan forced a casual, nonchalant expression. I heard the ocean view here is stunning. I just came to relax. Isn't that why CEO Su is here too? The tension between them was thick enough to cut with a knife. Seeing this, Yuan hastily changed the subject. President Bai, are you waiting for the 8 o'clock flight back to Beicheng? We are too. Let's walk together so we don't miss it. Ruanan hesitated for a fraction of a second, but ultimately nodded in agreement. Once the three women finally disappeared into the crowd, I carefully stepped out of the restroom, wiping a bead of cold sweat from my forehead. That was way too close. Thank God that little girl was smart enough to immediately agree to my bribe. Otherwise, my cover would have been completely blown. Just as I was preparing to slip away, my phone suddenly rang. Muya, you're back from your business trip. Xie Muya's sweet, gentle voice floated through the speaker. Yes, and I bought a gift for you. I'm at the airport right now. Should I bring it to the hospital tomorrow? Her voice was incredibly soft, yet held a stubborn persistence. No need. I'll just wait for you at your place. Hearing her determination, I didn't have the heart to refuse. All right then, I'll be home in about 30 minutes. Wait for me. I'm heading back right now. Okay, I'll be waiting for you. Standing gracefully outside the Xiao family villa, Xie Muya's beautiful eyes were brimming with absolute tenderness and deep anticipation. The moment I got home, I frantically jumped out of the car and ran over. I'm so sorry, the traffic was terrible. Have you been waiting long? Not at all, she smiled warmly. I figured it would take you a while. Saying this, she turned, opened her car door, and pulled out a stack of heavy, pristine medical books. Seeing them, my eyes instantly widened in pure shock. The original, unabridged collection of Dr. Batulu's work. How on earth did you know I've been desperately looking for this? You casually mentioned his work to me over a year ago, she laughed softly. I happened to see it while on my trip, so I bought it for you. Chatting happily, we walked into the villa together, but after carefully setting the books down, Muya suddenly claimed she had urgent personal matters and needed to leave immediately. Just as she reached the door, she suddenly pulled out an incredibly exquisite luxury watch. Chunan, this is for you. I was completely stunned. Another gift? She smiled softly. It's inconvenient to check your phone when you're treating patients. A watch will be much better for you. Before I could even attempt to refuse, Muya gracefully slipped into her car and drove off, leaving no room for argument. I stared down at the stunning timepiece in the velvet box, utterly bewildered. Wait, why does this look exactly like a couple's watch? When I finally walked back into the living room, my father and sister were sitting on the plush sofa. Chunan, my dad started, a knowing smirk on his face. That girl has been relentlessly chasing you for 4 solid years. She still hasn't given up, huh? My sister Zero immediately chimed in. If you ask me, Muya is an absolute catch. You're fully established in your career now. You really should start thinking about your personal life. I helplessly waved my hands in defeat. I haven't even thought about that. What's the rush? Jiru stood up, shooting me a wicked, teasing grin. Well, your big sister certainly doesn't have a beautiful, devoted admirer like Xie Muya following her around every single day. After she playfully sauntered off, Xiao Kong'an's expression shifted into something much more serious. You brat, do you actually like Muya or not? A girl of her status, willing to chase you for so long, treating you with the exact same devotion for 4 years straight. You truly need to consider her seriously. Hearing my father's solemn words, I was suddenly struck completely dumb. Did I like her? I wasn't entirely sure if it was love, but spending time with Xie Muya always made me feel incredibly comfortable and happy. That night, tossing and turning in bed, my father's words relentlessly echoed in my mind, making it absolutely impossible to sleep. Honestly, I was deeply confused. What exactly was it supposed to feel like when you truly loved someone? Was it supposed to be that sudden, explosive, heart-pounding sensation the very second you laid eyes on them? Because ever since my terrifying obsession with Zixi, all those years ago, no other woman had ever made me feel that kind of intense, overwhelming emotion again. For the past few years, I had completely buried myself in my grueling medical studies and demanding career, and because of that, those horrifying prophetic nightmares of the future had entirely vanished. I rarely even thought about my past in Beijing anymore. But today, seeing Zixi at the airport, all those suffocating memories violently surged back, entirely out of my control. In that moment, a sudden shocking realization hit me like a truck. I've been gone from Beicheng for 5 whole years. Maybe, just maybe, my old man was right. It really was time for me to finally move on and consider my own future. After agonizing over it for what felt like hours, I finally opened WeChat and sent Xie Muya a message. Are you free tomorrow night? Would you do me the honor of coming over for dinner? On the other end of the city, the moment Muya received the text, she instantly called me, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement and overwhelming joy. Chunan, are you sure you want me to eat at your house, not at a restaurant? I couldn't help but chuckle at her sheer enthusiasm. Yes, I am formally inviting you to have dinner at my house. Years ago, Xiao Chunan had looked her dead in the eye and coldly stated that he absolutely did not want a relationship. Back then, Xie Muya had simply given him a breathtakingly beautiful smile and replied, "Then, whenever you finally decide you want one, just let me know. Just tell me to come over to your house for dinner." Now that he had finally, after 4 long years, taken that step to show his heart, Muya was so overwhelmingly ecstatic she could barely form coherent sentences. Oh, okay. Then go to sleep early. Good night. Hanging up the phone, I didn't feel any wild, earth-shattering passion. Instead, what washed over me was a profound, grounding sense of absolute peace. After all, I didn't dislike Muya in the slightest. In fact, being with her brought me a deep sense of security and genuine warmth. Meanwhile, on the flight from Jiangcheng back to Beijing, Zixi remained utterly silent the entire journey. Even though the little girl's perfect testimony almost convinced her it was all a delusion, that man's striking side profile kept violently flashing through her mind on an endless loop. She was absolutely unequivocally certain that the shock she felt was terrifyingly real. Lost in her dark obsession, the moment Su Zixi returned to her massive estate, she immediately powered on her computer. Hacking directly into the Jiangcheng airport's security feed was an option, but the sheer volume of foot traffic would make the search excruciatingly long and incredibly difficult. However, Bai Ruanan's flight history was explicitly clear and easily traceable, but the instant the search results populated the screen, Su Zixi's eyes darkened into absolute terrifying voids. 3 minutes later, a deeply asleep Bai Ruanan was violently jolted awake by her phone, screaming beside her head. Who the hell is calling in the middle of the night? Was the man at the airport in Jiangcheng him? Su Zixi's voice was colder than absolute zero. Hearing that icy tone, Ruan's entire body violently shivered, her sleepiness instantly vanishing into thin air. Su Zixi, are you completely insane? My brother has been dead for 5 years. But in the very next second, Su Zixi's terrifyingly calm voice sliced through her lies. Then why don't you explain to me exactly why, over the past 5 years, you have flown to Europe 365 times, and flown to Jiangcheng exactly 520 times? Su Zixi's voice dripped with a terrifying, bone-chilling absolute certainty. I can write off the Europe trips as vacations. But according to my thorough investigation, the Bai family has 0 properties, 0 investments, and absolutely 0 business partners in Jiangcheng. So why are you so obsessively devoted to going there? Ruan instantly exploded in furious panic. You hacked my private travel logs? What gives you the right? And why the hell should I explain anything to a psycho like you? Su Zixi fell terrifyingly silent for a few agonizing seconds. If you refuse to explain, that's fine. I will just use my own methods to find Xiao Chunan. Click. She brutally hung up the phone. Runan was now wide awake, her heart hammering against her ribs in sheer terror. Should I call Chunan and warn him? She glanced at the clock. It was 2:30 a.m. No, I shouldn't wake him up. I'll go confront that lunatic Su Zixi in person tomorrow. Figure out what her sick plan is, and then warn my cousin. The very next morning, Su Zixi ruthlessly slammed a massive stack of confidential documents onto Li Yuanyan's desk. Find out exactly who the true shadow owner of this Jiangcheng Medical Corporation is. Why are we digging into this random company? Yuan stared at the documents, her face utterly bewildered. Su Zizi just cast a terrifyingly hollow, dead-eyed glance at her. Because I strongly suspect it is a hidden subsidiary secretly controlled by the Xiao family group. Yuan's breath violently hitched in her throat. Zixi, you watched the young master of the Xiao family die with your own 2 eyes. Even if you tear the entire Xiao family group apart, you will never find Xiao Chunan. Su Zizi just swept another disgustingly cold, absolute gaze over her. Deep down, after brutally analyzing all the hidden data, she had already formed a terrifying conclusion in her heart. And the exact moment the final report confirmed that the shadow owner of Wangquan Medical was indeed surnamed Xiao the Expensive Fountain Pen, in Su Zixi hand, snapped violently in half. With a sickening crack, the next day Bai Ruanan had intended to storm into Su Zixi's office to confront her. But the horrifying news she received instead made her blood run absolutely freezing cold. In her deranged psychotic pursuit of the truth, Su Zixi had actually hired men to violently dig up Xiao Chunan's grave. Furious beyond all reason, Ruanan aggressively floored her sports car, drifting wildly as she sped straight to the cemetery. Su Zixi, are you completely out of your fucking mind? My brother has been dead for 5 years, and you actually brought men here to desecrate his grave? Su Zixi didn't utter a single syllable, only turning to shoot Ruanan a disgustingly cold, absolute death glare. That single chilling look made Ruan's skin crawl violently, but she forced herself to scream louder. I'm talking to you, psychopath. Why the hell are you digging up my brother's grave? Su Zixi's tone was horrifyingly, ungodly calm. To do a DNA bone ash test, Ruanan felt as if a literal lightning bolt had struck her directly in the skull. My brother is dead and gone. There are absolutely no direct blood relatives of his left in Beijing. How the hell are you going to do a DNA test? Realizing that screaming at this complete lunatic was entirely useless, Ruan violently threw herself forward, trying to physically rip the shovels from the workers' hands. But the hired men completely ignored her frantic screaming, mercilessly driving their spades deeper into the dirt. Desperate, Ruan sprinted away to find the cemetery management. But the manager didn't give her a single shred of respect. And exactly what is your relationship to the deceased Mr. Xiao? I'm his cousin, Ruanan screamed, her face flushed with absolute sheer fury. The manager sneered, his eyes filled with absolute disgust. Oh, really? Then how come in the past 5 whole years, I have never once seen you come to sweep Mr. Xiao's grave? Meanwhile, this Miss Su comes constantly, and every single time she visits, she sits right there in front of his monument for hours on end. Hearing the manager's brutal words, Su Zixi's face remained entirely frozen, entirely devoid of any human emotion. But beside her, Li Yuan was completely stunned. CEO Bai never once visited his grave. Everyone knew that her relationship with Xiao Chunan was tighter than actual blood siblings. Hearing herself so ruthlessly exposed, Ruinen's face twisted in panicked rage, desperately trying to mask her suffocating guilt with more screaming. But absolutely no one paid her any attention. With a sickening heavy scrape, the workers finally forcefully pried open the massive marble lid of the tomb. As Zixi reached out with trembling, obsessive hands to carefully unwrap the silk cloth covering the bone ash, Ruinen violently yanked Li Yuanyuan's arm. What the hell is she planning? How is she going to do a DNA test? Yuanyuan let out a heavy, deeply sorrowful sigh. The day Xiao Chunan died, Zixi was the one who rushed him to the hospital. Her clothes were completely thoroughly soaked in his blood. Ruinen's eyes widened in absolute sheer, unadulterated horror. She actually kept those blood-soaked clothes for 5 entire years. Yuanyuan's face twisted into an unreadable expression of pure misery as she helplessly nodded, her eyes locked onto Zixi's terrifyingly stiff back. Ruan stared at the psycho kneeling in the dirt, her eyes filled with a horrific mixture of absolute shock and primal terror. Is she actually clinically insane? Who the fuck keeps a violently blood-soaked outfit for 5 years? And to actually dig up a dead man's grave based on a single tiny suspicion? Is this something a normal human being is even capable of doing? Yuanyuan sighed in total defeat. Even if she isn't completely insane yet, she's terrifyingly close. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, I had just gotten off work when my phone instantly exploded with Ruinen's frantic screaming call. Brother, Zixi violently dug up your grave. She's doing a DNA test on the ashes. And the worst part, she actually kept her blood-soaked clothes from 5 years ago. They still have your blood on them. She can actually extract your DNA. In that terrifying instant, I felt as if 5 massive bolts of lightning had struck me simultaneously, entirely obliterating my soul. Didn't you tell me she was completely convinced it was just a hallucination? I roared in utter panic. She was. But the second she got home, the psycho hacked into my private travel logs. She demanded to know why I secretly flew to Zhengcheng 520 times. Honestly, brother, it's been 5 years, maybe you should just stop hiding. I refuse to believe she can actually do anything to you. I rubbed my temples, completely exhausted. It's not about whether she can do anything to me or not. It's that I absolutely, categorically do not want her to know I'm still alive. I didn't fake my own agonizing death and abandon my entire life in Beijing on the Xiao family didn't sacrifice everything just for me to get violently dragged back into Zixi's insane orbit. After frantically weighing my current absolutely terrifying predicament, I quickly spoke again. Don't panic. The ashes inside that urn are literally just burnt wood and completely random dirt. She won't be able to extract a single shred of DNA from that. However, Zixi is absolutely going to come hunting for you next. You must absolutely strictly promise me you will never reveal my exact location or my home address. Ruinen desperately nodded through the phone. Don't worry, brother. I won't say a single word even if she beats me to death. The very second Ruinen hung up the phone, her father, Bai Guangming, aggressively pushed open the door to her office. My precious daughter, Daddy has a very important mission for you. The corporation is hosting a massive charity gala in Zhangcheng. I need you to fly out there immediately to secure the venue and handle the event logistics. The moment she heard the word Zhangcheng, Ruinen's eyes absolutely violently sparked with absolute joy. Just a simple charity gala. Consider it done. I'll fly out to Zhangcheng right this second. Watching his daughter frantically grab her phone and absolutely sprint out of the office, Bai Guangming let out a heavy sigh and slowly shook his head. Walking back to his own massive desk, he pulled out a heavily encrypted phone and dialed a number. CEO Su, I have done exactly as you asked. I've sent Bai Ruinan directly to the airport. Meanwhile, back in Jiangcheng, my heart was still hammering with absolute sheer terror. Just to be absolutely entirely safe, I decided it was best to instantly flee Jiangcheng and hide out in a completely foreign country until this terrifying storm completely blew over. My mind entirely made up, I sprinted to the director's office to aggressively beg for emergency leave, fully planning to rush to my small apartment near the hospital to frantically pack my bags. But the very second I stepped out of the hospital doors, my phone screamed again. It was Ruanen. Brother, are you at the hospital right now? What's wrong? I'm literally sprinting to my apartment right now. Hearing the strange tone in her voice, I instantly felt a sickening knot form in my stomach. Don't tell me you actually flew back to Zhangcheng again. I did. My dad explicitly ordered me to come here on a business trip. I'm heading straight to your apartment right now. Whenever Ruan came to Zhangcheng for fun, she frequently crashed at my small place, so she knew exactly where it was. She arrived incredibly fast. Upon discovering my desperate, frantic plan to flee the country and hide, she immediately started aggressively shoving my clothes into a suitcase. At that exact same moment, right below my apartment window, a sleek, utterly terrifying black luxury car slowly pulled up to the curb. The woman sitting in the back seat slowly raised her chilling, dead eyes to look at the apartment building, her gaze absolutely, utterly freezing. Since I had absolutely no idea how long I would be running for my life, I had completely stuffed an enormous suitcase to the brim. Just as I reached out to grab the doorknob to flee, Gao Yihan perfectly timed a phone call. Helplessly, I answered it. Bro, I am literally running for my absolute life right now. I'll explain everything later. If I don't leave right this second, I'm dead meat. But the very instant I ended the call and violently yanked the door open, I was met with Zixi standing right in the doorway, her terrifyingly cold, utterly absolute gaze locking directly onto my soul. The agonizing, suffocating fury that had been boiling inside her instantly, utterly exploded. Xiao Chunan, are you still trying to desperately run away from me? Go ahead, let me see you try and run now. I swallowed incredibly hard, my throat completely bone dry. Knowing I was entirely in the wrong, I absolutely didn't dare make a single sound. Seeing me cower, Ruinen instantly stepped forward, screaming furiously. Zixi, what the hell gives you the right to act so damn aggressive? So what if my brother faked his death to trick you? He doesn't owe you a single damn thing. He literally threw away his own life to save yours. All he wanted was to completely sever all ties with you. Is that a crime? Hearing these brutal, absolute words, Zixi instantly froze in pure shock. Why did you want to completely sever ties with me? I vigorously, aggressively scratched my head, completely at a loss for words. But Ruan didn't give a damn about my hesitation. You actually have the sheer audacity to ask that. Because your Su family is completely, utterly toxic. Your methods are disgustingly, horrifyingly cruel. Your father died in our hospital, yes, it might have been a tragic mistake, but my brother was absolutely, utterly terrified that your insane family would violently retaliate. He was forced to abandon his entire life because of you. You are the absolute reason he suffered horrifying nightmares every single night. Do you honestly have absolutely no idea how entirely repulsive you are? Zixi's eyes violently trembled. Deep down, she knew Ruan's vicious words weren't entirely baseless. After all, back when he was literally bleeding out and dying in her arms, his very last agonizing breath was spent desperately begging her not to destroy the Xiao family. But how could she possibly blame them? Even completely ignoring the fact that he took a knife to save her life, just the absolute sheer kindness Xiao Kang'an had shown the Su family over the years meant she would absolutely never ever target them. Lost in these agonizing thoughts, Zixi slowly turned her completely shattered gaze back to me. Chunan, in your heart, am I really just a ruthless, completely unreasonable monster? Hearing this, I slowly lowered my eyes, finally meeting her devastated gaze. I don't know. But I absolutely unequivocally couldn't risk my family's absolute safety. Everyone saw exactly what happened to the Han family. As these brutal words fell from my lips, a sickening, agonizingly sharp pain violently pierced Zixi completely shattered heart. She slowly closed her eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. When she finally forced them open again, her eyes were terrifyingly, completely dead and empty. Chunan, I heard the scenery in Jiangchun is quite beautiful. Why don't you take a walk with me? Relying on my absolute status as her childhood friend, I used to treat the eldest miss of the Su family like a mere toy, even forcing her to call me daddy. But 10 years later, on the very day Zixi was supposed to study abroad, I suddenly awakened my completely future memories. Realizing my family would be entirely destroyed by her revenge due to my past cruelty, I immediately swore to stay as far away from her as possible. Ruinen violently threw herself in front of me. We aren't in Beicheng anymore. Brother, you absolutely do not have to be afraid of this psycho. Standing to the side, Li Yu and Yan finally let out a heavy, absolutely exhausted sigh. Young Master Xiao, just take a walk with her. It's the perfect opportunity to finally clear up all these horrifying misunderstandings. Only Yu and Yan truly knew the absolute literal hell Zixi had violently suffered through for the past 5 years because of Xiao Chunan's fake death. If absolutely anyone else had dared to completely trick Zixi like this, the consequences would be absolutely unequivocally, terrifyingly brutal. Hearing her plea, I didn't refuse again. After all, it was entirely lined with brilliantly fiery red cherry blossoms. Zixi and I walked in completely terrifying silence for a very long time. Finally, Zixi abruptly, violently halted her steps. She slowly turned her absolutely dead eyes to look at me. I want to know what exactly were those horrifying nightmares you had all those years ago. What could I have possibly done to make you so utterly disgusted by me? I froze for a long, agonizing moment before finally forcing the brutal, completely words out. I dreamt that you became a terrifying, utterly ruthless corporate overlord and you absolutely destroyed me and the Xiao family. After a heavy pause, I added, in the dream, my family was utterly annihilated by you. Even Ruanan was entirely dragged down with us. None of us were ever entirely spared. Hearing this, Zixi's completely utterly dead eyes lost focus, completely staring off into the distant ocean. And I, by unspoken mutual agreement, utterly didn't say another word. Suddenly, the completely terrifying silence was shattered by my violently screaming phone ringtone. It was Xie Muya. Chunan, I heard you violently rushed out of the hospital. Did something happen? I heard you rushed off this afternoon. Yeah, something came up. I glanced over at Su Zixi, unsure how much longer she planned to stay by the sea. Xie Muya's voice echoed through the phone again. Are you coming back to the hospital? I'll wait for you. It might be really late. It's fine, I'll keep waiting. Hanging up, I finally noticed Su Zixi staring right at me. Do you have plans tonight, she asked? I gave a vague nod. Just meeting a friend for dinner at home. All right, then let's head back. I froze. I expected her to interrogate me about why I lied, but to my surprise, she didn't pry at all. Seeing my absolute disbelief, Su Zixi's heart ached. I promised I wouldn't make things difficult for the Xiao family. Now, I'll give you another vow I will never do anything to hurt them. You can return to the North City whenever you want. I will completely vanish from your life and I will never set foot in Jiang City again. As she spoke those words, her heart felt like it was being ripped apart, yet her beautiful face remained completely emotionless. I stood there utterly shocked that she would make such a concession. Soon her taxi arrived. Chunan, I won't see you off. I looked back at her, the words stuck in my throat. Just as I turned to leave, she suddenly ran toward me and stopped. I looked at her in confusion, catching a hidden, desperate plea in her eyes. Can I hug you? I stared at her in sheer disbelief. Then, she revealed a smile I hadn't seen in years. Old friends hug when they reunite, right? Besides, it's been 5 years. I was taken aback. She was actually positioning herself as just a friend. Seeing the tears welling in her eyes, I hesitated before finally stepping forward and gently wrapping my arms around her. Her hands trembled. For 5 years, she had suffered from endless insomnia, haunted by nightmares of my cold body lying in her arms. But right now, I was warm, and in this single fleeting moment, the nightmare that had tormented her for half a decade finally shattered. Forcing back her tears, Su Zixi gently let go and took a step back, her gaze softening. Chunan, be careful on your way back. I suddenly realized I couldn't read her at all. What about you? She offered a faint smile. The view here is beautiful. I want to walk a little longer. As she watched my back disappear into the distance, a single tear finally escaped her eyes. Meanwhile, after making sure Bai Ruonan was all right, I drove straight back to the hospital. The moment I stepped into the elevator, I bumped into a breathless Director Huo. We both froze. Chunan, didn't you take the day off? Why are you back? I let out an awkward cough. Everything was resolved, so I didn't need to leave anymore. But Director, weren't you off the clock too? Why are you here so late? He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with a helpless sigh. That Miss Su who came to see me the other day, her migraines flared up. Even painkillers aren't working. Her assistant called me in a total panic. For some reason, my chest suddenly tightened. Which Miss Su? I asked, a strange sense of dread washing over me. The CEO of some mobile communications company, Su Zixi. Right at that moment, the elevator doors opened. I was about to step out, but my foot stopped in midair. Instead, I pressed the close button. I'm coming up with you. Li Yuanyan was waiting frantically outside the ward. Seeing me, her expression instantly turned cold, but this was a matter of life and death. She immediately dragged Director Huo inside. I glanced into the room and completely froze. Su Zixi was leaning against the bed, her face deathly pale, drenched in cold sweat. Director Huo quickly pulled out his acupuncture kit. Miss Su, these needles will hurt a bit. You have to endure it. Do not move. He struck fast, driving a needle straight into a critical acupoint on her forehead. Her body jerked as if electrocuted, yet she gritted her teeth, not making a single sound. By the time he finished placing over a dozen needles, the deep frown on her face finally began to ease. Her tense body relaxed, and slowly her eyes fluttered shut as she drifted into a deep sleep. Li Yuan was thrilled. Director Huo, if you had this skill, why didn't you say so last time? Wiping his brow, he sighed. Because this method is highly risky. First, the pain is excruciating. Most people can't handle it. And second, I'm no god. There's a chance I might not be able to cure this completely. If your expectations are too high and I fail, you might turn around and blame me. Li Yuan immediately waved her hands in desperation. Just do your best. If it doesn't work out, we accept the consequences. I can even write you a formal guarantee. Director Huo hesitated, clearly still worried about the backlash. Stepping forward, I finally broke my silence. Director, please treat President Su. They aren't the type to be unreasonable. He looked at me in surprise. You know them. I nodded. We went to high school together. Meanwhile, Su Zixi wasn't entirely asleep. In her hazy state of consciousness, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Xiao Chunan. She weakly forced her eyes open, catching sight of me talking to the doctor. Knowing we were acquaintances, Director Huo finally let out a sigh of relief. I can treat her, but I need absolute cooperation. Since we are using acupuncture, Miss Su must stay in our hospital every single day for the next 3 months. Li Yuan agreed without hesitation. I couldn't hold back anymore and asked about the root cause of her condition. This is caused by severe psychological trauma, the director explained. 5 years ago, a friend of hers took a knife to save her life. After he passed away, she couldn't stop reliving that exact moment. The chronic insomnia eventually evolved into this agonizing migraine. I stared at Su Zixi in utter shock. This friend he was talking about, it couldn't be me, right? Su Zixi pressed her pale lips together, staying completely silent. But Li Yuan couldn't hold back her anger. Who else could it be? Aside from young Master Shao, who else would take a blade for her? Who else could carve themselves so deeply into her soul? Director Huo was stunned, but didn't Miss Su say this friend passed away? Su Zi's expression remained calm. There was a mistake. The director was dumbfounded. How do you make a mistake about someone dying? Realizing the awkward tension, he quickly stepped toward the door. Since you old classmates are catching up, I won't disturb you. I'll head home first. Li Yuan glared at me before jumping to her feet. Director, let me walk you out. Soon, the hospital room fell dead silent, leaving only Su, Zixi, and me. My mind was a chaotic mess. Back then, I thought my fake death would end all our tangled fates, but I never expected it to leave her with such deep psychological scars. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like dirt, since we were kids, even making her call me daddy just to humiliate her. It wasn't until she left to study abroad a decade later that I suddenly awakened to my future memories, realizing that my sickening childhood bullying would eventually drive my childhood friend to destroy my entire family. I immediately decided to vanish from her life. Hesitating for a moment, I spoke up, swallowed by guilt. I'm sorry, I really didn't know things would turn out like this. Seeing my remorse, Su Zixi offered a gentle, reassuring smile. It's okay. I let out a quiet sigh of relief. Then just focus on your treatment. Director Huo will definitely cure you. She nodded obediently. You work at this hospital now? Yeah, Director Huo is Mai. Before I could finish, someone called my name. I turned around to see Xie Muya standing by the door. She glanced at Su Zixi before walking in. I heard Director Huo admitted your classmate. Is everything okay? It was pretty serious earlier, but she's fine now, I replied, standing up. Well, President Su, I won't disturb you anymore. Get some rest. Su Zixi's eyes stayed locked onto Xie Muya as she gave a stiff nod. Stepping out of the ward, I scratched the back of my head awkwardly. Sorry, Muya. I kept you waiting. She smiled warmly. It's fine, actually. My dad's voice suddenly blasted through my phone. Shunan, didn't you say you were bringing Xie Muya home for dinner? Look at the time. I checked my watch. It was already past 9 in the evening. We're on our way. Give us half an hour if you guys are hungry, eat first. Don't bother coming over, my sister interrupted over the line. There's a huge issue with one of the company's projects. Dad and I are heading to the office right now. I hung up, looking at Xie Muya apologetically. My family has an emergency, how about we just eat out tonight? Her eyes visibly dimmed with disappointment. Then what you said yesterday, I knew exactly what she was worried about. Going to my house meant meeting the parents. It's just delayed for a couple of days, I reassured her. Hearing that, her radiant smile immediately returned. The very next day, right after my rounds, a colleague came running up to me with a massive grin. You sneaky bastard, you've been dating Xie Muya this whole time and didn't even tell me? Where's my wedding candy? I stared at him, completely baffled. Before I could even process his words, Xie Muya walked in, blushing, holding a massive bag of colorful candies. Shunan, you're not mad, are you? I was just so happy I couldn't help but share it with everyone in the hospital. I was caught totally off guard. I never expected her to make it public so fast, but after a second thought, I just let it slide. People were going to find out eventually anyway. Meanwhile, in the VIP ward, Su Zixi stared blankly at the pile of candy on her table. Xie Muya had personally delivered it, cheerfully announcing that Xiao Chunan had finally agreed to be her boyfriend. Li Yuan coughed awkwardly. They're just dating, they only just got together. I bet they don't even have a solid foundation yet. Su Zixi's cold, beautiful eyes remained fixed on the sweets. A dull, throbbing pain began to echo in her skull again. After a long, suffocating silence, Su Zixi mercilessly ripped the IV drip out of her hand and stood up. Let's go. We are returning to the North City. A few minutes later, Director Huo and I slammed the ward doors open, but Su Zixi coldly claimed she had urgent business to attend to. I couldn't understand her reckless behavior. Didn't you agree to the treatment yesterday? You can't delay this anymore. Your body is going to collapse. She shot me an icy glare. Whether I get treated or not has absolutely nothing to do with Dr. Shao. Her freezing attitude was completely different from her gentle demeanor by the sea. Anger flared up in my chest. I'd begged the director for you yesterday. Leaving like this isn't just irresponsible to yourself, it's disrespecting our director. She stayed silent before dropping a single sorry and turning her back on me. Unable to stand her stubbornness, I lunged forward and grabbed her arm. If you don't treat this now, it's going to kill you. Her face remained chillingly calm, almost entirely devoid of emotion. Dr. Shao, I said I would step out of your life completely, so you better not interfere with my decisions either. My blood boiled. I was just trying to save her life. Fine. If she wanted to die, that was her problem. Later that night, after my shift ended, I waited by the road for Xie Muya to head home together. My dad called again. Kid, are you coming back for dinner or what? Almost. Muya isn't out yet. As soon as she is, we're heading back. Suddenly, the roar of an engine pierced the night. I turned around, phone in hand, and my pupils shrank to the size of pinholes. A pitch-black sedan was speeding right at me. In a split second, Xie Muya lunged forward and violently yanked me backward. But the car didn't slow down at all, and in the blink of an eye, it vanished into the pitch-black night. Xie Muya held onto me tightly, her entire body trembling in terror. Chunan, are you okay? I tried with everything I had to steady my shaking hands. I'm fine. The traffic police arrived almost instantly to check the surveillance footage, but the perpetrator had planned this perfectly. It was a cloned license plate. Tracking the driver was going to be incredibly difficult. Head home for now. The moment we have a lead, the police will notify you immediately. On the drive back, all of Shiemuya's usual cheerfulness was gone, replaced entirely by pure, unadulterated dread. Arriving in front of her villa, she forced a strained smile. Chunan, I'm going to have to skip dinner tonight. Something came up at home that I need to handle. Next time. Without waiting for a response, she got into her own car and drove straight to a luxury hotel suite. The moment the door opened, Xie Muya's face turned completely vicious, and she slapped the man standing inside across the face. The man didn't even try to dodge. He just stood there, staring at her blankly. Miss Shi, you finally came to see me. Ziyang, do you have a death wish? How dare you target him? Ziyang's expression was heavy with desperation. Master is running out of time. He ordered me to bring you back at all costs. I had no choice. I told you. I have zero interest in the Xie family's affairs. You might not have any interest, but the rest of the family won't just let you go. When the time comes, let alone an ordinary doctor, even the man you love will be destroyed. You know exactly what the Xie family is capable of. Hearing this, Xie Muya lowered her head in absolute silence. The very next morning, the moment I arrived at the hospital, I was hit with a bombshell. Xie Muya had publicly announced our breakup and resigned on the spot. At that exact same moment, miles away, Zixi was staring at an intelligence report in pure shock. Meanwhile, completely oblivious to the chaos and ignoring the pitying stares of my colleagues, I quietly changed into my scrubs. But the second I stepped into my office, Director Huo was already waiting for me. He revealed that the hospital was recommending me for a 3-month advanced training program in the North City. I opened my mouth to refuse immediately. The North City was the absolute last place I wanted to go. But Director Huo had a different perspective. Going there gives you a chance to advance your career and take a breather. By the time you get back, everyone will have forgotten about the drama with Muya. On top of that, you have history with Miss Su. You can treat her on my behalf. 2 birds, 1 stone. I gave a helpless smile. But I don't know the first thing about acupuncture. More importantly, I didn't want to get tangled up with Zixi again. His eyes lit up. If you don't know, I'll teach you. You're brilliant. You'll learn it in a heartbeat. After a moment of heavy silence, I just waved my hand. I'm sorry, Director. You should find someone else. He let out a long, defeated sigh. If you really don't want to, I won't force you. I thought that was the end of it. But 3 days later, explosive news about Zixi dominated the internet. Han Qingfeng, an employee of Zhongwen Media Group, had actually attempted to assassinate the CEO of Phoenix Company, Zixi, right in the middle of a live press conference. Vice President Li Yuanyuan immediately announced the termination of all partnerships with Zhongwen Media, vowing to hold both the assassin and the company fully accountable. The moment I saw the headlines, I called Bai Ruonan. Brother, it's true. Han Qingfeng was already taken away by the police. Back when the Han family went bankrupt, Bai Ruan, remembering their old friendship, had begged her father to give him a job. Nobody ever expected that years later Han Qingfeng would pull a stunt like this. The assassination attempt caused the Bai family stock to completely crash, and the sheer fury had landed Bai Guangling straight into the hospital. Bai Ruanan was on the verge of a breakdown. If the Su family chose to pursue this relentlessly, the Bai family would be finished. A chilling thought struck me. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had humiliated her for years, treating the proud eldest miss like a dog. When I awakened my memories and realized my childhood friend would eventually return for apocalyptic revenge, I tried to escape. But even though Bai Ruanan hadn't finished her sentence, I finally understood the nightmare from my memories was resurfacing. First, the Xiao family took a hit. Then, the Han family went bankrupt. And now it was the Bai family's turn. Send me Zixi and Li Yuanyuan's phone numbers right now, I demanded. But Bai Ruanan desperately tried to stop me. I already tried looking for her. She won't even see me. Brother, please, just stay out of this. How could I just stay out of it? Maybe, just maybe. I still held some weight in her eyes. Honestly, I wasn't confident at all, but I had to bite the bullet and try. If Zixi was willing to settle this privately, everything could still be salvaged. Unable to sway my resolve, and thinking of her father lying in the hospital, Bai Ruanan finally caved and sent the contacts. I dialed Zixi number immediately. When she didn't pick up, I fired off a text. President Su, this is Director Xiao. Are you available for a call? The message was met with absolute silence. I called again, still no answer. A creeping sense of dread washed over me. Half an hour later, in the CEO's office of Phoenix Company in the North City, Zixi returned from a meeting only to find 2 missed calls and a single text glaring from her screen. Her gaze locked onto the 3 characters Xiao Chu Nan. She stared at it for a long time, naturally guessing the reason for my call. Lost in thought, Zixi's finger hovered over the dial button, but a few seconds later she pulled her hand back. Instead, she turned around and called Li Yuanyuan. When will the police release the investigation results? Probably in the next couple of days. We're just waiting on the final procedures. Han Qingfeng confessed, and we have the surveillance footage as evidence. Everything is clear. There's basically nothing left to investigate. However, Su Zixi's response was chillingly indifferent. Once the police results are out, tell the PR department to issue a new statement. Do not pursue the Bai family. Only hold the assassin accountable. On the other end of the line, Li Yuanyuan was utterly stunned, but I just accepted an interview yesterday, swearing we'd hold Zhongwen Media fully responsible. It's only been a few days, isn't changing our stance this fast a bit much. Besides, Han Qingfeng is still an employee of Zhongwen Media, they should bear the consequences. Su Zixi remained silent for a moment. Xiao Chunan called me, call him back later. Tell him not to worry over nothing. Zhongwen Media will be fine. Li Yuanyuan was dumbfounded. She was doing this favor for someone else, yet she was terrified he would find out, and now she was pushing the credit onto Li Yuanyuan? What was going through her head? Meanwhile, having received no response from Su Zixi, I realized my impulsive decision might have ruined things. Since I was begging for mercy on behalf of the Bai family, I needed to offer something of equal value in return. With that thought, I quietly slipped away and headed straight for Director Huo's office. Director, about that spot for advanced training at North City University, is it still available? Not yet, Director Huo sighed, rubbing his temples in frustration. We barely have enough people in this department as it is, and the ones we do have all found excuses to reject the offer. Hearing this, I scratched my head awkwardly. That if I say I want to go now, is it too late? The director's eyes lit up instantly. Too late? Of course it's not too late. Just as Li Yuanyuan finished her work and was about to dial my number, my call came through first. Miss Li, if I can cure Miss Su, can the Su family agree not to pursue the Bai family? She was taken aback for a moment, but quickly realized the immense value of my offer. If young Master Xiao truly has a way to cure Zixi, then of course it's a deal. I finally let out a long sigh of relief. I'll contact you again in half a month. I hope you'll honor the agreement when the time comes. No problem. I'll be waiting for your good news, young Master Xiao. And you don't need to worry about the Bai family. Zhongwen Media will be completely fine. I originally thought Li Yuanyuan would need at least half a month to convince Su Zixi, but to my sheer disbelief, just 2 days later, the Su family released an official statement. They would not pursue Zhongwen Media, but the assassin would face the maximum penalty. The moment the statement went live, the Bai family's plummeting stocks skyrocketed back up. Even Bai Guangling, who was recovering in the hospital, instantly regained his color. Bai Ruonan excitedly called to tell me the miraculous news. Brother, what did you do to make Su Zixi agree to this? Honestly, I was just as shocked at how fast the statement came out. Afraid that Bai Ruonan would overthink things, I kept my private deal with Li Yuanyuan a secret. I only told her that I was heading to North City University Medical School for advanced training in a few days. Half a month later, Li Yuanyuan received my call, shocked to learn I was already downstairs at their company. She rushed down in a panic. And sure enough, she saw me standing right outside the lobby. Seeing her rush over, I offered a polite smile. I'm here to fulfill my end of the agreement. She looked confused. But I don't see Director Huo. Even without the director here, I can still cure President Su. Li Yuanyuan was still hesitating when her phone suddenly rang. It was Director Huo calling to confirm that I was fully capable of treating the illness. Overjoyed by the confirmation, she realized this was a godsend for Zixi. Without a second thought, she quickly led me upstairs, heading straight for Su Zixi's office. Young Master Xiao, wait here for a second. I'll go in and tell Zixi. I nodded calmly, standing quietly by the door. Because the door was slightly ajar, I could faintly hear Li Yuanyuan whispering something inside. But her words were immediately met with Su Zixi's freezing voice. Li Yuanyuan, are you tired of your job? Tell him to leave, right now. Hearing that, Li Yuanyuan felt utterly helpless. She thought Su Zixi wouldn't have the heart to refuse Xiao Chunan, but her rejection was more ruthless than she ever imagined. Knowing Su Zixi's mind was made up, Li Yuanyuan turned around and walked out with an apologetic smile. I'm sorry, young Master Xiao Zixi might not need your treatment right now. I fell into a stunned silence for a moment. Does President Su doubt my medical skills? Li Yuanyuan didn't know how to explain it. It's not really because of that anyway. Let me walk you downstairs first. I didn't say another word and followed her down. Once we reached the lobby, I looked at her with absolute seriousness. What time does President Su get off work? I'll come back later. Her condition couldn't be delayed any longer. For one, her illness was genuinely severe. And second, I really didn't want to owe her a favor. If it's early, maybe 4 or 5. If it's late, probably around 8. But honestly, I don't think you should bother. Zixi is very stubborn. She won't change her mind. I just smiled and waved it off. It's fine. I'll come back tonight. After grabbing dinner, I took a cab straight back to the company to find Su Zixi. When Li Yuanyuan got my call, she was completely shocked that I actually returned. She hurried to Su Zixi's office. Young Master Xiao said he wants to talk to you about the treatment again. Su Zixi's eyebrows locked into a deep frown. Are you really that free? She slammed a thick research report onto the desk in front of Li Yuanyuan. If you have so much free time, write me an analysis report on this. But Li Yuanyuan had been holding back her frustration all day. Damn it, am I not doing this for your sake? How much longer are you going to drag out this illness? If you really want to push Xiao Chunan away, then deal with him yourself. Slamming the door in anger, she stormed out with a cold face. Left alone, Zixi finally couldn't resist. She picked up her phone. I was just about to speak when the voice on the other end completely cut me off. If Li Yuan didn't make it clear enough, I don't mind telling you myself I do not want you treating my illness. Her voice was chillingly cold, completely devoid of emotion. That is my answer. You can leave now. I wanted to ask why she was so against me treating her, but the call had already ended. After thinking it over, I decided to just keep waiting. I was going to ask her face to face why she absolutely refused my help. Were my medical skills really that untrustworthy? I checked the time. It was already past 9 in the evening, and Zixi still hadn't come out. I dialed Li Yuan's number again. Miss Li, is President Su still busy? Li Yuan was slightly taken aback. Young Master Xiao, you still haven't left? No. I want to wait until she gets off work and talk to her in person. This time, Li Yuan was genuinely furious, but she forced herself to suppress it and explain on her behalf. She's probably still working overtime. Wait right there. I'll go find her. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had bullied the eldest miss of the Su family since we were young, even forcing her to call me daddy. It wasn't until she left to study abroad a decade later that I awakened to my future memories. Realizing my sickening childhood bullying would eventually drive my childhood friend to destroy my entire family, I immediately decided to vanish from her life. Inside the office, Zixi had just finished an online meeting with the R&D executives and was resting exhaustedly on her desk. The very next second, Li Yuan kicked the door open. I'm giving you 2 choices. 1, go downstairs and see Xiao Chunan right now. 2, I drag him up here to see you. Pick one. Zixi was genuinely startled. Chunan, he's still here. Li Yuan looked at her, utterly frustrated. Even if you promise to completely step out of his life, he's the one coming to you now. Can't you just see him and let him treat you? Downstairs, I had been standing for a long time. I was starting to think that if she still refused to see me, I might as well just give up. I had waited long enough. I had shown more than enough sincerity. Just as I was contemplating leaving, a familiar figure walked into view. I immediately stood up. President Su, you're finally willing to see me. But her brow was furrowed in clear annoyance. Didn't I tell you to leave? I don't know why you're so obsessed with treating me. But if you're worried about my medical skills, you don't have to be. As a doctor, I wouldn't have come all the way to North City if I wasn't absolutely confident. Zixi remained silent, not saying a single word. I continued, desperately trying to persuade her. President Su, do you remember the night Uncle Su got into that car accident? I went to the hospital in the middle of the night and insisted on helping you make that PowerPoint. She definitely remembered. It was because of my help that night that she successfully took over the company and stepped into the public eye. My expression turned dead serious. You didn't want my help back then either, but I didn't let you down, did I? Since I dared to come to you, I guarantee I have absolute confidence. Looking at the man standing in front of her, Zixi hesitated for a long time before finally speaking in a trembling voice. It's not because of your medical skills. I was completely confused. Then what is it? Her heart was racing faster and faster. It was because she had no confidence in herself. If they didn't meet, she could force herself to hold back. But if she had to see me every single day, she truly couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't lock me by her side forever. And if that happened, I would definitely resent her for the rest of my life. Thinking of this, she desperately suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. It's too late, just go back for now. I was thrilled. So President Su agrees to the treatment. Looking at my gentle, healing smile, she spaced out for a second. The name, Chunan, was right on the tip of her tongue. But it eventually turned into a quiet, Zixi was about to have her driver take me back, but I had already called a cab. While waiting, we locked down the treatment schedule. Since I had advanced training at the medical school during the day and practical classes in the evening, we agreed to start the treatment at 9 o'clock every night. Just before I left, I looked at her. Then I'll come to Yushi Terrace tomorrow night, President Su. She stayed silent for a long time before finally giving me the address to Yuxi Terrace. Memorizing the location, I got into the car and looked back at her. See you tomorrow night, President Su. The car quickly disappeared into the distance. Long after I was gone, Zixi stood frozen by the side of the road. Thinking about the phrase, see you tomorrow night, her heart was in absolute turmoil. Over the past few days, she had exhausted every ounce of her willpower just to keep herself calm, at least on the surface. But my sudden arrival had effortlessly thrown her heart into absolute chaos once again. The next night, after finishing my practical class, I was waiting for a cab to UC Terrace. While standing there, I suddenly felt a gaze locked onto me. I turned around and met a pair of watery wide eyes. The girl looked like she had just been startled, her eyes perfectly round. Then she quickly ran over. Hello, big brother. I'm Meng Chi. Can I ask what your name is? Finding the little girl somewhat amusing, I introduced myself. My name is Xiao Chunan, the former CEO of the Xiao family's Hongyuan group. I was instantly shocked. The Xiao family had moved out of North City 5 years ago. I never expected a little girl like her to still remember. Thinking about it, I gave a firm nod. Back then, I faked my death to escape Zixi, but now that the hostility between us had dissolved, there was no need to keep playing dead. The moment the words left my mouth, the little girl actually jumped in pure joy. I knew it. There's no way someone could look exactly like you. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but feel a little confused. Do you know me? Meng Chi's eyes were practically sparkling. It's okay if you don't remember, Brother Chunan, but I will never forget you for the rest of my life. I used to be super chubby back then. You were the one who saved me. Back then, because of her weight, she had been cornered in an alley at school by a group of girls, constantly mocked and bullied. It was my timely appearance that stopped the severe school bullying. I gently smiled at the girl. Don't care about how other people look at you. You are beautiful. When you lose weight in the future, you'll be even more stunning. Unfortunately, shortly after we met, I transferred schools and left. Later, she saw the news of my death online. Right now, the little girl was enthusiastically dragging me into her family's car. When she found out where I was going, she was overjoyed. Brother, you live there too. My house is right next door. But wait, I remember that's Su Zizi's house. I froze for a second. The car pulled up to the entrance of Yushi Terrace. I thanked her and was about to get out when Meng Chi smiled brightly at me. Brother Chu Nan, come over to my house for dinner when you have time. I smiled and agreed. Turning around, I went upstairs and knocked on the door. Su Zixi opened it, stepping slightly to the side. Come in. Where's the bedroom? I asked. I need you lying down for the acupuncture. She gave a dazed nod and led me to the bedroom. Muttering a quick wait a moment, she turned and walked into the kitchen. A few moments later, she came back holding a glass of freshly squeezed iced black tea juice. Seeing the drink, I couldn't help but pause. Iced black tea juice was my absolute favorite drink. But because work was always so busy, I usually just ate at the hospital cafeteria and hadn't drank it in a very long time. But how did Su Zixi know I loved this? I didn't think too much about it. Unrolling my acupuncture kit, I pulled out the silver needles. Let's start the treatment. President Su, you can lie down now. Su Zixi closed her eyes and obediently lay down. But she seemed incredibly tense. Her body was completely stiff, and her long, slender fingers were gripping the bedsheets tightly. I couldn't help but find it slightly amusing. So Su Zixi was actually terrified of needles. When Director Huo treated her last time, she seemed completely unfazed. I spoke in a gentle, comforting tone. President Su, relax. Don't be nervous. It will hurt a little, but it'll be over soon. Leaning forward, I focused entirely on inserting the silver needles. The agonizing pain, combined with the sheer torment of me being so close to her, pushed Su Zixi's endurance to its absolute limit. But under my acupuncture, her consciousness slowly began to blur. She could faintly hear a man's gentle voice comforting her by her ear. Almost done, just endure it a little longer. Enduring the pain, Su Zixi eventually drifted into a deep sleep. I let out a long breath of relief. Acupuncture slightly relaxed the patient's nerves, so falling asleep was a completely normal reaction. I gently pulled the blanket up and covered her, figuring she would sleep deeply for a while. Then, I quietly slipped out of the room. But the moment I stepped outside, I found that it had started pouring rain. Standing at the door, quietly packing his umbrella, was a gentle, elegant man. Meng Zihao's pupils violently contracted. Xiao Chunan, aren't you dead? I looked at him with a faint smile. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm still alive. I had assumed Su Zixi would have told him the truth a long time ago. After all, they were incredibly close back in high school. The two of them were famously inseparable. Meng Zihao's face instantly drained of color. What the hell is going on? I didn't have the patience to deal with his nonsense. If you have the time, ask Su Zixi yourself. But he absolutely refused to let me leave. What are you doing at Zixi's house? I'm here to treat her illness. Meng Zihao looked deeply confused. Her health is perfectly fine. What illness could she possibly have? I was speechless. Did she really not tell him anything at all? It's nothing major, I replied. Just migraines. A period of acupuncture treatment and she'll be fine. Now, young Master Meng, I need to get back, so I'll be leaving first. But he became heavily agitated and blocked my path. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had bullied the eldest miss of the Su family since we were kids, even making her call me daddy. It wasn't until she left to study abroad a decade later that I awakened to my future memories. Realizing my sickening childhood bullying would eventually drive my childhood friend to destroy my entire family, I immediately decided to vanish from her life. But right now, Meng Zihao was furiously blocking my way. You disappeared for 5 years. Why did you suddenly come back? Out of all the doctors in the world, why does she insist on you treating her? What exactly are you trying to do? I just stared at him coldly. I know exactly what you're trying to say. I remember telling you that I would never like Su Zixi, and even now, that hasn't changed. The resentment in Meng Zihao's eyes deepened into a toxic glare. Of course I remember. But the moment you turned around, you died saving her, and you died on my exact birthday. For 5 years, every single year on my birthday, Zixi goes to your grave to mourn you. Is this what you call not liking her? I completely froze. This was the very first time I was hearing about this. Seeing my indifferent expression, Meng Zihao gritted his teeth furiously. I want you to leave. Stay away from me and Su Zixi forever. Do not ever appear in front of us again. But I flat out refused. I will leave, but not right now. Once her treatment is completely finished, I'll explain everything. Dropping those words, I turned and walked into the rain. But right at that moment, a soft, weak voice called out from behind me. Chunan. I turned back to see Su Zixi standing at the door. It's raining outside. Let me drive you back. I quickly declined her offer. You should go back inside. Let Meng Zihao take care of you. But Su Zixi shot a freezing glare at Meng Zihao. You go home. Turning back to her driver, her tone shifted. Get the car. We're taking Dr. Xiao back. Meng Zihao's face instantly stiffened, entirely at a loss for words. Meanwhile, Su Zixi opened an umbrella and handed it to me. Let's go, Dr. Xiao. Seeing how stubborn she was and considering I really didn't have a rider would just seem pretentious. I didn't say another word, and the two of us walked to the car under the same umbrella. The car wasn't parked far away. We sat in the back seat in total silence. Hoping to break the suffocating tension in the car, I spoke up first. I heard that the day I got into the accident was Meng Zihao's birthday and that for the past 5 years, you visited my grave on that exact day. He seems really bothered by it. You should probably talk to him and clear the air. Don't let me ruin your relationship. Su Zixi's eyebrows locked into a deep frown. What relationship do I have with Meng Zihao? I was completely bewildered. Didn't you used to really like him? Since you ignored his birthday because of me, you definitely owe him an apology. In an instant, Su Zixi shot me a glare so cold it could freeze over hell. Who told you I liked Meng Zihao? My relationship with him is exactly like your relationship with Bai Ruanan. I was even more confused, but Bai Ruanan and I are just like brother and sister. Su Zixi stared at me with a profoundly deep gaze. So you're allowed to treat Bai Ruanan like a sister, but I'm not allowed to treat Meng Zihao like a brother. Zihao isn't my type at all. Because Meng Zihao lacked a mother figure growing up, he was heavily dependent on her. So acting as an older sister, she had done everything in her power to take care of him. It wasn't until the year I died that Su Zixi finally realized what it actually meant to truly love someone. So later, when Meng Zihao confessed his feelings to her, she didn't hesitate for a single second. She rejected him completely. From that point on, she couldn't even treat him as a younger brother anymore. That was exactly why she was so cold to him now. I was completely stunned. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Then what type do you like?" But this time, she didn't answer. She just stared blankly out the window. Since she kept staring at me without saying a word, my entire body started feeling unnatural. If you don't want to answer, just pretend I didn't ask. I quickly turned my head to look out the window, but deep down, my inner gossip was screaming. What kind of man did Su Zixi actually like? Meanwhile, Meng Zihao stood in the rain watching our car disappear into the distance. His eyes were burning with an unrecognizable mix of absolute jealousy and pure rage. He immediately drove back to the Yushuan villa and found Su Yuanyi playing with his cat. The moment he saw him, Meng Zihao rushed forward. "Grandpa Su, Xiao Chunan, he's back." He immediately poured out everything that had just happened, twisting the narrative. These past few years, Zixi has suffered so much, all because of him. But he wasn't dead at all. He lied to all of us. Su Yuanyi was shaken to his core. Even he never imagined that Xiao Chunan was still alive. Fast forward to the weekend, and I suddenly received an unexpected phone call. "Is this Mr. Xiao? I am Su Yuanyi." I almost dropped my phone. "Grandpa Su, I heard you've returned to North City, and that you're treating Zixi." Su Yuanyi's tone was completely normal, speaking as if my 5-year death had never even happened. "Zixi will be returning to Yushuewan tonight. Mr. Xiao, please come to the villa to treat her. I would also like to ask about her condition." Left with no choice, I had to bite the bullet and agree. At least Su Yuanyi's attitude was relatively polite. "If possible, Mr. Xiao, could you arrive half an hour earlier than your scheduled treatment time?" After a 2-second silence, I finally replied, "I'll do my best." "Excellent. I will be waiting for you, Mr. Xiao. I'll send you the address now." Hanging up the phone, I stared at the address, my heart feeling incredibly heavy. I genuinely didn't want to see Su Yuanyi. Back then, because of countless misunderstandings, his attitude toward me had been extraordinarily cold. Later that night, right at 8 o'clock, Su Yuanyi called Su Zixi. "Come back to Yushueran tonight. Xiao Chunan will be coming over shortly." Su Zixi's face instantly darkened. "You contacted him. Getting sick is a major issue as your grandfather. Shouldn't I at least ask about it?" Su Yuanyi paused for a moment. "You can leave the company now. Xiao Chunan will be arriving very soon." Su Zixi's heart immediately sank. "Grandpa, please don't forget that he's my doctor." Su Yuanyi let out a small chuckle. "What are you trying to say? Are you afraid I'll scold him like I used to? If I do, are you going to sever ties with this old man?" He let out a long, helpless sigh. "Over the past few years, you've only come back to see me a handful of times, and even when you do, we barely speak. In your eyes, I haven't been your grandfather for a long time. The only person you see is Xiao Chunan." At that exact moment, Li Yuan walked over to find Su Zixi, only to see her storming out without even looking back. "Zixi, what's wrong?" Su Zixi shot her a furious glare. "I'll settle the score with you when I get back." Eventually, she nervously stepped into the Su family villa. In the living room, Su Yuanyi was sitting in a wheelchair, with a deeply apathetic Meng Zihao standing by his side. Perhaps it was due to years of comfortable retirement, but Su Yuanyi's expression was actually much softer than it had been 8 years ago. He waved his hand, motioning for me to sit down. What exactly is wrong with Zixi? I hesitated for a moment before deciding to hide the real cause. It's just severe insomnia and migraines. After a period of acupuncture, she'll be fully recovered. She had been suffering for 5 years. Since she had kept it hidden from Su Yuanyi and Meng Zihao for this long, she clearly didn't want them to worry. Su Yuanyu looked slightly confused. I heard from Li Yuanyuan that Mr. Xiao works at the Jiangxi Tea Hospital. Why are you treating her? I understood exactly what he was implying. While the illness seemed minor, completely curing it was extremely difficult. Fortunately, our department director is an absolute expert in this field. He couldn't make it, so he sent me instead. Don't worry, Grandpa Su. After the 3-month treatment cycle, President Su's condition will vastly improve. But Meng Zihao coldly interjected from the side. Your department has so many doctors. Why did he specifically send you? I frowned, just about to fire back, when Su Yuanyi cut me off. Zihao, go see if Zixi has arrived yet. I have a few private questions for Mr. Xiao. My heart instantly dropped. Did Su Yuanyi misunderstand the situation? Was he trying to vent his anger on me for Meng Zihao's sake? Meanwhile, Su Zixi's car sped furiously through the streets, arriving at Yushaiwan in the blink of an eye. Meng Zihao walked out with a smile to greet her, but she immediately cut him off with an icy glare. Where is Chu Nan? Intimidated by her freezing stare, Meng Zihao quickly answered. He's in the living room talking to Grandpa Su. Before he could even finish, Su Zixi bolted toward the villa. Inside the living room, I was half kneeling in front of Su Yuanyi's wheelchair, just about to examine his old leg injuries. Suddenly, Su Zixi stormed in with a dark expression. Without a word of explanation, she grabbed my arm and forcibly pulled me to my feet. Xiao Chu Nan. If someone tells you to kneel, you just kneel? Where did all the arrogance of the Xiao family's eldest young master go? I was completely stunned. When did I ever kneel? I was just trying to examine Grandpa Su's injuries. Su Zixi froze instantly. Grandpa, why did you suddenly let Chu Nan examine you? Su Yuanyi gave her an exasperated look. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had humiliated the eldest miss of the Su family since we were kids, even making her call me daddy. It wasn't until she left to study abroad a decade later that I finally awakened to my future memories. Realizing my sickening bullying would eventually drive my childhood friend to destroy my entire family, I immediately decided to vanish from her life. Su Yuanyi glared at Su Zixi in annoyance. I purposely made things difficult for Mr. Xiao to test his medical skills. Is that not allowed? Seeing the tension rising, I quickly stepped forward to clear the air. No, I volunteered to look at his injuries. Grandpa Su has been in a wheelchair for so many years, I just wanted to see if his legs were suitable for prosthetics. Right at that moment, the servants walked in carrying several bowls of meticulously stewed shark fin soup. The Su family actually didn't have a habit of eating shark fin, but Su Zixi instantly remembered years ago when her father and grandfather first visited the Xiao family to ask for a favor. The Xiao family had served them this exact dish. Realizing what was happening, Su Zixi looked at Su Yuanyi in absolute shock. Bothered. But Su Yuanyi couldn't even be bothered to look at her, happily motioning for me to eat first. After finishing the midnight snack, Su Zixi led me upstairs. Left alone, Su Yuanyi let out a long, helpless sigh. Zihao, you saw how Zixi acted just now. You're not getting any younger either. Stop wasting your time on her. There are plenty of girls out there who are far better and much gentler than her. I promise you. Hearing this, Meng Zihao abruptly stood up. Grandpa Su, I'm tired. I'm going back to rest. Su Yuanyi watched Meng Zihao's figure disappear around the corner of the stairs, and after a long silence, he let out a heavy sigh. By the time I came back downstairs, Su Yuanyi was the only one left in the living room, deep in thought. The treatment is over already? Stay a little longer, Mr. Xiao. Once Zixi wakes up, you two can head back together. It's fine, Grandpa Su. It's easy enough for me to head back alone. As for the prosthetics, I'll keep an eye out for a suitable specialist for you. With that, I turned around and left. Su Yuanyi wanted to call the driver to take me, but I was already gone. Stepping out of the Su family villa, I didn't immediately call a cab. Instead, walking under the cold glow of the streetlights, my feet carried me instinctively toward the old Xiao family villa. When Su Zixi finally woke up, she realized I was already gone. She panicked and rushed downstairs, only to find out I had just left. Sitting in the back of her car, she looked out the window. Yushuwan is a private villa district. It's really hard to get a cab here. Logically, he shouldn't have been able to leave this fast. A strange thought suddenly crossed her mind. She ordered the driver to turn around and head toward the #1 villa in Yushuwan. And sure enough, from a distance I was standing there, staring blankly at the old mansion. Su Zixi immediately got out of the car and slowly walked up behind me. Hearing footsteps, I instinctively turned around. Seeing Su Zixi, I let out an awkward smile. President Su, how did you know I'd be here? She remained completely silent for a moment. Do you want to go inside and take a look? I was slightly taken aback. Can I? But the very next second, remembering reality, my eyes dimmed. Forget it. Someone else is probably living there now? But to my shock, Su Zixi reached out and pressed the doorbell. I panicked. President Su, don't ring it. It's so late it's really not good to bother them. She turned to look at me calmly. It's no bother. A friend of mine owns this place and nobody currently lives here. Hearing that, I finally let out a small sigh of relief. A minute later, a middle-aged man in his 50s opened the door. He clearly recognized Su Zixi, but the moment his gaze landed on me, all the color completely drained from his face. Young master? I was just as stunned. Uncle Shu, why are you here? Uncle Shu was the old driver for the Xiao family. He had treated me incredibly well since I was a kid. When the Xiao family moved away and sold the old mansion, they dismissed all the staff. Although Uncle Shu was devastated, he had no choice but to find another job. I never imagined that 5 years later, he would still be working at the old Xiao mansion. Since my resurrection was still a shock, it took quite a bit of explaining to calm him down. Uncle Shu couldn't hold back his tears of absolute joy. As long as the young master is alive, as long as you're alive. I scratched my head in deep curiosity. Uncle Shu, how are you still here? He was just about to answer when Su Zixi swiftly cut him off. My friend who bought the old Xiao mansion just happened to hire him. As for the rest, young Master Xiao, Miss Su, please come inside quickly. Stepping into the courtyard, I couldn't help but marvel at the insane coincidence. The person who bought the old Xiao mansion just happened to hire Uncle Shu. What was even more bizarre was that even though 5 years had passed, the villa was kept exactly as I remembered it. Young Master Xiao, do you want to go inside the house and take a look? I thought about it for a moment, but ultimately waved my hand and declined. After all, it was someone else's property. When Su Zixi and I finally left, Uncle Shu walked us all the way to the gate, overwhelmed with emotion. Young Master Xiao, please come back and visit often. I let out an awkward laugh. Seeing it once is enough. After all, it's someone else's house. It's not really appropriate. Young Master Xiao, you can come whenever you want. Nobody lives here anyway. The new owner definitely won't be moving in anytime soon. I just gave a simple nod. Take care of your health, Uncle Shu. I'll come visit you when I have the chance. When we finally arrived back at my apartment building, I thanked Su Zixi and prepared to get out of the car. Suddenly, she called my name. Chunan, do you have any plans tomorrow? I turned around, completely confused. Why was she suddenly asking this? If you're free, I can take you out to look around tomorrow. Just treat it as a thank you for treating my illness. North City has changed a lot in the last 5 years. I actually did want to explore the city a bit, but having Su Zixi as my tour guide just felt way too awkward. In the end, I politely declined her invitation. Forget it. I have to review my coursework tomorrow. She gave a calm nod, but what I totally didn't expect was that the moment I walked into my apartment after rejecting her, Meng Qi called me. Brother Chunan, tomorrow is the weekend. Let's go out and play. You are absolutely not allowed to refuse. If you say no, I will cry. I treated her exactly the same, using the excuse that I was busy. But to my utter disbelief, this little girl didn't care about my excuses at all. What could you possibly be busy with on a weekend? Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I'm coming to your apartment building to pick you up. And I'll introduce you to my older sister, Meng Jia. Be there or be square. Before I could even protest, she completely hung up the phone, giving me zero chance to refuse. The next morning, exactly at 10 a.m., Meng Qi called me from downstairs. Her absolute stubbornness made it clear if I didn't come down, she was going to wait there forever. Unable to reject her overwhelming enthusiasm, I forced myself to go downstairs. In the end, the three of us ended up spending the entire day at a massive holiday resort. Meanwhile, Su Zixi and Li Yuanyuan were having dinner at the Meng family's house. Suddenly, Li Yuanyuan excitedly grabbed her phone and shoved her WeChat moments in front of them. Who dares touch the crown princess? Are they tired of living? The photo clearly showed my tall figure, half carrying, half hugging Meng Jia off a horse. Meng Jia's face was flushed, looking as if she had just been slightly startled, her hands gripping my shoulders tightly. The moment Su Zixi saw the photo, her eyes turned ice cold. He wasn't willing to go out with her because he had to review his coursework. But the second he turned around, he went out playing with Meng Jia. Right at that exact moment, my phone rang. It was Su Zixi. The second I answered, a freezing voice pierced through the speaker. Are you done reviewing your business coursework? For some inexplicable reason, I suddenly felt incredibly guilty. I'm done reviewing. I couldn't exactly tell her that I had spent the entire day out playing with the Meng sisters, right? Su Zixi's frown deepened in pure irritation. When can you come over? Something came up today. I need to push the treatment forward. I panicked slightly. It might take another half an hour. Before picking up the call, I had literally just asked the Meng family's driver, and he said it would take at least 30 minutes to get back. After hanging up, I let out a massive sigh of relief. Thank God I was smart enough to bring my acupuncture kit with me today. Much later, the car finally arrived outside the Su family villa. I knocked on the door repeatedly, but nobody answered. After a moment of hesitation, I gently pushed the door open. The lights were off, but the room wasn't pitch black. The moonlight spilled through the glass windows, and I could clearly see Su Zixi leaning back on the sofa with her eyes closed. Was she asleep? Remembering how severe her insomnia was, I quietly closed the door and tiptoed toward her. But the very second I set my bag down, an icy voice echoed from right behind me. Was it fun going out with Meng Jia? I practically jumped out of my skin. When my brain finally processed what she said, panic set in. How did she know I was out with the Meng sisters today? It was all right, I stuttered. I paused for a second before adding, let me turn on the lights first. Didn't President Sue say you had something to do? I'll start the acupuncture right now. But as I tried to walk past her, she suddenly grabbed my shirt and stood up. Caught completely off guard, my foot slipped and we both violently crashed onto the sofa, relying on my status as her childhood friend. I had bullied the eldest miss of the Sue family since we were kids, even forcing her to call me daddy. It wasn't until she left to study abroad a decade later that I finally awakened to my future memories. Realizing my sickening childhood bullying would eventually drive my childhood friend to destroy my entire family, I immediately decided to vanish from her life. But right now, as the heavy scent of alcohol washed over me, I finally noticed the half-empty bottle of red wine on the table. Every single alarm bell in my head started ringing. President Sue, you're drunk. But she didn't say a single word. She just stared at me, her face completely flushed. It was only then that I realized exactly how compromising our position was. My heart started pounding uncontrollably against my ribs. Just as I desperately tried to get up and apologize, Zixi violently wrapped her arms around me and pulled me in tight. President Sue, look closely. Who am I? I'm Xiao Chu Nan, the doctor here to give you acupuncture. But Zixi remained entirely unresponsive. Her eyes locked dead onto me. The intense stare made the hair on my arms stand on end. Zixi, it's me, Xiao Chunan. Didn't you say you had something to do later? Let me give you the acupuncture treatment first, okay? But she was like a person asleep, clinging to my body like a sloth. Seeing this, I just gave up. I stopped talking and let her hold me, deciding to see exactly how long she could keep this up. The living room was far too quiet at night with her lying in my arms. I originally thought she would be the first one unable to bear it, but in the end, I was the one who broke first. Zixi, I'm begging you, please let me go, all right? Finally, she stirred, her hands slowly loosening their grip. I immediately scrambled to my feet, grabbing my acupuncture kit and fleeing the scene as fast as I could. Feeling the burning heat on my face and my heart pounding violently in my chest, my mind was a mess. Right then, Director Huo suddenly called. Director? Isn't there a charity event tonight? How do you have time to call me? I just thought of you, so I figured I'd check in. By the way, how are things going over there? Is the treatment going smoothly? I stood there awkwardly for a moment, ultimately too embarrassed to mention Zixi's strange behavior. Director Huo, I don't want to treat Zixi anymore. Her temperament is just too bizarre. On the other end of the line, Director Huo let out a helpless sigh. What can you do? We're doctors, after all. Since we entered this profession, healing the wounded and saving the dying is our bounden duty. Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. Chunan, I believe you understand this principle just as well as I do. After hanging up with the director, I stood by the roadside gazing up at the pale moonlight. 2.5 minutes later, I quietly slipped back inside. Tonight's treatment wasn't finished yet. Standing by the door, Zixi froze. I gave her a single glance before walking straight into the bedroom. She obediently followed and lay down, her beautiful eyes staring blankly at me, as if she couldn't believe I had actually come back. Meanwhile, Meng Wei called Meng Jie into the study. What exactly is going on between you and Mr. Xiao? Meng Jie looked completely nonchalant. What do you mean? Didn't I just spend the day hanging out with him and Xiao Qi? Don't tell me you're worried about spending a whole day playing around at that resort. Meng Wei knew her younger sister far too well. If she said she didn't have any ulterior motives toward Xiao Chunan, no one would believe it. Seeing her true intentions exposed by her older sister, Meng Ji didn't show a hint of shame. If it was just Xiao Qi, of course I wouldn't. But if Mr. Xiao is there, then it's a different story. She had to admit Xiao Chunan was undeniably handsome, handsomer than any man she had ever seen. You better drop those little thoughts of yours right now, Meng Wei scolded. Do you even know what his relationship with Zixi is? He is years older than you. Why are you entertaining such crooked ideas? How are they crooked ideas? Meng Jie retorted. He's single and he doesn't even like Zixi. So what if I'm younger? Does that mean I'm not allowed to pursue him? Enough. Meng Wei slammed her hand heavily onto the desk. I don't care how much you fool around normally, but absolutely not this time. Why not? Just because Zixi likes him? Meng Jie crossed her arms. So just because she can't catch the man she likes, no one else is allowed to try? Well, I'm going to pursue him anyway. A sharp slap echoed through the room. Meng Wei had struck Meng Jie right across the face. I'm trying to talk to you nicely, but you just won't listen, will you? Meng Jie's face instantly darkened, and she turned on her heel and stormed out. Meanwhile, right outside the Su family villa, I had just walked out the door when Director Huo called me yet again. Chunan, I think something happened to your sister. You need to call her right now and find out what's going on. Hearing that, I immediately dialed Bai Ruanan's number, but the line just kept ringing. No one answered. In an instant, my heart gave a violent tremor. In all these years, this was the very first time she hadn't picked up my call. After a moment of panicked thinking, I quickly dialed Gao Yihan's number. Yihan, are you off work? Director Huo just said Bai Ruanan got hurt, and I can't reach her. Can you go to my place and check on her? Gao Yihan glanced at the time, and despite a brief hesitation, she agreed. Arriving at my apartment door, Gao Yihan called out for a long time but got no response. Confused, she turned on the lights and searched the place, only to find Bai Ruanan lying flat on my bed. not even having taken her shoes off. Hey, tomboy, I was shouting for half the day. Why didn't you make a sound? Gao Yihan walked over to her, completely speechless, only to discover that Ruin's eyes were completely red and she reeked of red wine. What happened to you? Why are you crying like this? Meanwhile, on my end, I glanced at Meng Jia, who was sitting next to me looking like an absolute fangirl. I felt like this girl was acting incredibly strange today. First, she had her driver deliver steamed buns to me in the morning. Then at noon, she begged me to eat with her and Meng Chi. And when I casually mentioned that I liked a certain gaming keyboard, a courier contacted me that very afternoon to deliver a brand new one of that exact brand. Now that it was night, I stepped out of class only to see that familiar car waiting for me again. Chunan, are you heading to Su Zixi's house? I'm heading home anyway, so I can give you a ride since it's on the way. Although I didn't believe for a second that it was just on the way, I got into the car anyway. Inside, I cast a suspicious look at her. Did something trigger you today? Meeting my gaze? Meng Jia waved her hand, not hiding her intentions in the slightest. I wasn't triggered at all. I just want to pursue you. Is that so wrong? I was instantly left utterly dumbfounded. Meng Jia, do you have any idea what you're saying? She had just turned 18 this year, while I was a full 5 years older than her. But Meng Ji just looked at me with absolute seriousness. Isn't the older brother and younger sister romance trope super popular right now? As long as we like each other, age isn't a problem. I obviously knew exactly what she was trying to do. If you want to mess around, I'm not playing along. If you want to date, go find someone your own age. Meng Jia pressed her lips together and stayed completely silent. When the car finally arrived at the destination, she suddenly looked up at me. Chunan, I really am not messing around. I'll be waiting right here for you. I'm going to take you home later. There's something I need to tell you. I frowned, completely speechless. Enough. Don't be stubborn, just go home. Once inside the Su family villa, I was just about to start the acupuncture when Su Zixi suddenly spoke up. Tonight, can you wait until I wake up before you leave? I rejected her outright. No. Su Zixi froze for a moment. Then, she suddenly sat up and quickly began setting an alarm on her phone. Seeing this, I stared at her in total confusion. What exactly are you doing? Su Zixi stared back at me with a cheeky grin. My stomach is going to hurt later, so I have to set an alarm first. The acupuncture session ended quickly, but when I went downstairs, I discovered that Meng Jia's private car was still parked in the exact same spot. The moment she saw me, she practically flew out of the vehicle. All right, Chunan, I'm taking you home. Hearing this, I felt incredibly helpless. Why was it such a trend these days for girls to aggressively pursue guys? After a moment of silence, I looked at her with utter seriousness. Did everything I say to you earlier just go in one ear and out the other? Whatever you say won't stop me from taking you home, she replied stubbornly. Besides, I wanted to go for a drive to clear my head anyway. I was just about to refuse her when the sharp clacking of high heels suddenly echoed from behind me. Without even turning around, I knew it was Su Zixi. I was honestly baffled. Logically speaking, her sleep should be getting deeper and deeper after each acupuncture session. So how on earth did she manage to wake herself up? Su Zixi's beautiful eyes locked coldly onto Meng Jia. Jia, what are you doing here? A smug smile tugged at the corner of Meng Jia's lips. Sister Su, I was just about to give Chunan a ride back home. Then she waved her hand toward me. Come on, Chunan, get in the car. Su Zixi's expression turned instantly frosty, her gaze fixed with terrifying coldness upon Meng Jia. Just as I was about to open my mouth to intervene, Su Zix marched briskly right up to her. If your sister can't educate you properly, I certainly don't mind doing it for her. As soon as the words left her mouth, Su Zixi delivered a vicious slap directly across Meng Jia's face. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future. Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. The resounding crack of the slap echoed through the air. Meng Jia stood frozen in place, clutching her stinging cheek in absolute shock. Seeing that things were spiraling out of control, I quickly stepped forward to stop her. Su Zixi, what are you doing? She's Meng Wei's sister. Aren't you two good friends? How could you just hit her? But Su Zixi merely furrowed her beautiful brows and looked at me. Xiao Chunan, if I remember correctly, you have a girlfriend. If you're looking for some thrilling excitement, then I'll play with you. Stop trying to ruin other people's little girls. Hearing this, I stared at her in utter bewilderment. What on earth are you talking about? Who am I ruining? I don't. But before I could even finish my sentence, Su Zixi suddenly stood on her tiptoes and kissed me fiercely. Standing off to the side, Meng Jia finally snapped out of her daze, only to be struck like lightning by the scene playing out before her. Her sister's warning from earlier that morning echoed uncontrollably in her mind. Xiao Chunan is Su Zixi's ultimate obsession. Jia, don't do anything stupid. In that moment, Meng Jia finally understood exactly what her older sister meant. Turning around, she scrambled back into the car as if fleeing for her life, desperately ordering the driver to speed away. 3 full minutes later, Su Zixi slowly pulled away. I stumbled backward, grabbing onto a nearby telephone pole as I gasped heavily for air. My first kiss had actually been brutally stolen by this woman, and the most frustrating part was that aggressive kiss had actually made my heart race wildly. After returning to my apartment, I distractedly picked up my phone to call her. President Sue, I don't think I'm suited to continue your treatment anymore. I won't be coming over tomorrow. On the other end of the line, Sue Zixi choked back her tears. So you just want to give up halfway? Chunan, when you first came to Northern City to find me, do you remember what I told you? I never wanted to cure this illness to begin with. You were the one who stubbornly insisted. But the situation now is completely different. Back then, I truly hadn't realized that Sue Zixi would act like this. Then her freezing voice transmitted through the phone. Since the treatment has already begun, you don't get to just walk away. Hearing those words, my heart violently skipped a beat. So, President Sue, are you trying to threaten me? Just like in that nightmare, ruining the Xiao family and driving us to ruin? Going to any lengths just to make me a criminal? I spoke my next words very carefully, one by one. Then what about the promise you made to me by the sea? Was that just a fleeting emotion? Were you just moving yourself to tears? Are you really going to go back on your word like this? On the other end of the line, Suzy remembered the solemn vow she had made to me on that beach. But back then, she truly believed she could actually do it. As the memories washed over her, tears began to pool in the corners of her eyes. A single tear silently slipped down her cheek. Xiao Chunan, you never should have come to Northern City to find me. And you definitely shouldn't have appeared in front of me, spending day and night by my side. With those final words, Sue Zixi hung up the phone. I was left completely unable to comprehend the meaning behind her words. I had only come to Northern City to treat her illness. What did that have to do with everything that happened tonight? Late that night, Bai Ruanan returned from Jiang City to find me. Seeing how strange she looked, I dropped my usual casual attitude. Who exactly did you get into a fight with? You didn't even answer your phone the other day. Hearing this, Bai Ruanan puffed out her cheeks in anger. Who else could it be? It's my terrible father, Bai Guangling. If it weren't for him, how would Suzy even know where you were staying? I couldn't help but chuckle. You silly girl, why are you holding a grudge against your own father? Uncle Bai probably had his own difficulties to deal with. Actually, I had called Gao Yihan earlier to check up on her. She told me that Bai Ruanan was just feeling a little down, and aside from crying until her eyes were red and having a little wine, it was nothing serious. Once inside the apartment, Bai Ruanan looked around the small room. Brother, are you serious? You're actually living in a tiny place like this? I came to Northern City for my medical studies, not to go on vacation, I replied simply. As we spoke, I turned on the TV and sat down next to her. Bai Ruanan's gaze suddenly landed on my face with confusion. Brother, how did your lip get busted open? I maintained a perfectly calm expression as I offered an explanation. I just accidentally bumped into something earlier. Hearing this, Bai Ruanan didn't suspect a thing. She popped open a drink and started watching TV. But it wasn't long before she couldn't help but turn her head to look at me again. Brother, why exactly did you come to Northern City for your studies? Didn't you completely want to avoid running into Zixi? This was a question she had been wanting to ask for a very long time. The study program was going to last for half a year after all. Feeling completely guilty, I actively avoided making eye contact with her. Zixi and I don't run in the same circles. We won't be running into each other anyway. But what about you? Is your mood finally starting to improve? Bai Ruonan playfully waved her hand. I'm doing great. You really don't need to worry about me, brother. For the first time in so many years, the two siblings who had always treated each other with complete honesty now both harbored secrets they could never speak of. The very next day, right after I sent Bai Ruanan off, Li Yuan suddenly called my phone. Xiao, I'm waiting downstairs at your apartment building. Do me a favor and come down here. I have something I need to say to you. Hearing her tone, my brows instinctively furrowed. If this is about President Su's illness, then I don't think we have anything to talk about. I'll do my best to communicate with Director Huo and see if we can swap in another colleague to handle her treatment. I am not here to beg young Master Xiao to treat Zixi, Li Yuan interrupted, her voice uncharacteristically low. I just have a few things to say. I'll leave as soon as I'm done. It won't take up too much of your precious time. After struggling internally for a moment, I eventually made my way downstairs. Miss Li, what exactly do you have to say to me? Young Master Xiao, I remember telling you and Director Huo previously that Zixi once went 10 straight days and nights without sleeping. And it was after that incident that she developed these symptoms of severe insomnia and migraines. But do you have any idea exactly why she didn't sleep for 10 days? I looked at the person standing before me in absolute confusion. Of course you wouldn't know. Because back then, you were dead, having run off to Jiang City with the rest of your family. Li Yuan's gaze locked viciously onto me, all traces of her former gentleness completely gone. After your supposed death, she stayed right there beside your grave. She guarded your tombstone for 10 days and 10 nights. She didn't leave until her body finally gave out and she collapsed, rushing her to the hospital. That was when this horrible insomnia and migraine problem started. Young Master Xiao, you spent these past 5 years studying abroad in Europe, you became a respected doctor, you got yourself a girlfriend, and you lived your days happily with your family in perfect bliss. But do you have any idea how Zixi managed to survive all this time? Before I could even open my mouth to respond, Li Yu and Yuan coldly pressed on. I suppose young Master Shao wouldn't know, because you never once considered what kind of devastating consequences your fake death would bring to Su Zixi. I stood there, utterly paralyzed. I knew that my faked death back then would undoubtedly leave some psychological scars on her. I even knew that her severe migraine condition had some direct connection to my supposed passing. But why would she guard my grave for 10 straight days? Li Yuen opened her mouth, desperately wanting to spill the entire truth right then and there. But then she remembered the promise she had made to Su Zixi. Because of overwhelming guilt, she had deeply misunderstood young Master Shao regarding the car crash incident, yet you still sacrificed your life to save hers. Zixi never even had the chance to make amends. She simply couldn't cross that hurdle in her heart. Hearing this, I fell into a long, heavy silence. An indescribable mixture of emotions churned within me. 10 days and 10 nights, how could Su Zixi be so incredibly foolish? Even if she felt guilty, she shouldn't have destroyed her own body like that. Ever since finding out you were still alive in Jiang City, Zixi had originally decided to just let the whole matter go. Li Yuan continued. And speaking of which, back when you called to beg me about the Bai family situation, Su Zixi had actually already instructed me to arrange for the PR department to issue a statement dropping all charges against Zhongwen Film. When young Master Shao first arrived in Northern City, she absolutely refused to see you. It was me who insisted she go downstairs to meet you. If I hadn't pushed her back then, if she hadn't agreed to let you treat her, perhaps she wouldn't be in this state now. I don't know exactly what Zixi did to make you suddenly go back on your word and refuse to continue the treatment. But Zixi suffered through 5 years of absolute torment because of your faked death. And now that you are alive and now that you clearly have the ability to cure, hurt you just want to give up. No matter how I look at it, I just feel so incredibly bitter on her behalf. After saying all of this, Li Yuen softened her tone slightly, her words now carrying a pleading edge. You know far better than I do what the consequences will be if Zixi's illness drags on any longer. Can you truly find it in your heart to just stand by and watch her die? I felt a massive shockwave crash through my mind, rendering me completely unable to speak a single word. Back when I made that phone call to beg Li Yuen for help, Su Zixi had already ordered them to issue a statement sparing the Bai family. But back then, when I tried to call Su Zixi directly, she hadn't picked up the phone at all. Could it be that she had already guessed exactly what I was going to say? At that moment, my head throbbed with a dull pain, my mind twisting into an absolute mess. Yet Li Yuen showed absolutely no intention of stopping. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. But Li Yuen just kept speaking, her words cutting through the air. Young Master Shao, did you really think you were the only one suffering from nightmares? For the past 5 years, every single time Zixi falls asleep, she is relentlessly tortured by terrifying nightmares. Li Yuen's voice was deathly cold, as if she were desperately suppressing a furious rage burning in her chest. The moment Zixi closes her eyes, just dreams of young Master Shao covered in blood dying in her arms. She has woken up countless times drenched in cold sweat. Young Master Shao, your nightmare didn't come true, but Zixi has been genuinely tormented by hers, and you deceived her for 5 whole years. Treating her like this, do you think it's fair? I felt my vision spinning, my heart filled with a chaotic mix of emotions. Su Zixi was usually so calm and composed, yet she would suddenly explode over trivial matters, even doing unbelievable things. It seemed that the suffering she endured over the past 5 years truly had everything to do with me. Yet last night, I actually said such hurtful things. I was practically twisting a knife in her heart. Wait here for a moment. Leaving those words behind, I immediately turned and sprinted upstairs. A moment later, I came running back down. Miss Li, please take me to see Su Zixi. Li Yuen froze, realizing her words had actually worked. Feeling anxious, I stepped up and knocked on the door. After waiting for about 10 minutes, the door finally crept open. Seeing who it was, Su Zixi instantly guessed what had happened. Yuen, do you really love meddling in other people's business that much? It has nothing to do with Miss Li. I chose to come myself, I said. President Su, you were right. Since the treatment has already begun, we shouldn't abandon it halfway. Seeing this, Li Yuen immediately played along. Since young Master Shao is here to treat you, I'll talk to you about company matters tomorrow. With that, Li Yuen quickly slipped away. I walked past Su Zixi and stepped into the house, only to turn around and find her still standing frozen at the door. President Su, what are you still standing there for? Come here, it's getting late. My voice was incredibly gentle, completely lacking the frustration and coldness from last night. Su Zixi took a deep breath, her beautiful eyes still icy. Li Yuen went to find you. What exactly did she say? She didn't say anything, I replied, lying through my teeth with a straight face. We just happened to bump into each other downstairs. Yesterday, I let my emotions get the better of me. Stopping the treatment was indeed too impulsive. Please forgive me, President Su. But Su Zixi didn't buy a single word of it. Whatever Li Yuan told you, just ignore it. To get you to treat me, she would inevitably exaggerate things. As she spoke, Su Zixi's body swayed slightly. Just go after what happened last night. You really aren't suited to treat me anymore. Seeing her in such a weak and fragile state, I became even more certain of what Li Yuan had told me. Her migraine had definitely flared up again. With that in mind, I walked over and gently supported her. Does it hurt a lot? The moment my hands touched her, Su Zixi's body couldn't help but tremble. Xiao Chunan, did you hear a word I just said? I heard you, I replied smoothly. You're hiding it so painfully, so let's not waste any more time. Su Zixi's icy eyes locked intensely onto me. Xiao Chunan, you better think very clearly about what you're doing right now. I've thought about it very clearly. As a doctor, I absolutely cannot abandon my patient halfway. However, I do have one request, and I hope President Su will agree to it. Hearing this, Su Zixi stared at me for several seconds before slowly speaking. What request? I let out a helpless sigh. Next time, could President Su please have a little patience and let me finish speaking first? And please don't lose your temper so easily. Su Zixi frowned. She clearly didn't think there was anything left for me to explain about last night. The fact that I had a girlfriend was true, and the fact that I was getting close to Meng Jia was also true. I know your relationship with the Meng family is very special, I continued, and I can understand why you might worry that I have ulterior motives toward Meng Jia, but I swear, I have zero interest in her. In my eyes, Meng Jia is just a child even younger than Bai Ruanan. However, Su Zixi's face remained completely expressionless, though the coldness in her eyes seemed to thaw just a fraction, without her realizing. I, Xiao Chunan, am not someone with such a low bottom line. Not to mention I have no interest in Meng Jia. Even if I did, the situation isn't what you think. Because I don't even have a girlfriend. At this, Su Zixi was instantly stunned, looking at me in absolute disbelief. But Xie Muya clearly said that you two were already. Hearing this, I fell silent for a moment. We were together, but we broke up very quickly. I was honestly too embarrassed to admit that I was dumped on the very second day. It just felt incredibly humiliating. Su Zixi paused, her voice trembling slightly. Then why didn't you explain that yesterday? I was going to explain, but you were so furious, you didn't even give me the chance. Thinking back to that specific scene from last night, my face instantly flushed red. And after that, I was genuinely angry. You thought so poorly of me, I was so mad I didn't want to explain anything to you anymore. Besides, breaking up with Xie Muya is my private business, and it's not exactly glorious. At the time, I thought I wouldn't be treating you anymore anyway, so it didn't matter if I explained or not. Hearing this, Su Zixi stood frozen in place, her beautiful eyes staring blankly at me. Meeting her gaze, I suddenly felt a faint wave of uneasiness. So do you agree to my request or not? I agree, Su Zixi answered almost without hesitation. From the moment she heard me say I had broken up with Xie Muya, her heart hadn't stopped racing. I promise you I will be patient in the future. I will definitely listen to you finish speaking. Hearing this, I finally breathed a secret sigh of relief. After the acupuncture session ended, I quietly stepped out of the room. Suddenly, I remembered what Li Yuan had said. In the dead of night, Su Zixi would often stand alone by the window, staring blankly into space. For her, those kinds of nights were probably just ordinary sleepless nights tormented by endless nightmares. Thinking of this, I genuinely felt that lying to her about my death back then was incredibly unfair to her. After hesitating for a moment, I turned around. I made my way into the kitchen, but the moment I pulled open the refrigerator door, I was instantly stunned. Why was the fridge completely stocked with iced black tea and fruit juice? Wasn't that my absolute favorite drink? Could it be that Su Zixi loved drinking this too? Hearing the noise coming from the kitchen, Su Zixi slowly opened her eyes, but she only saw darkness around her, not the person she wanted to see. Even the conversation they just had felt like nothing more than an unrealistic hallucination brought on by her excruciating migraine. But right at that moment, the bedroom door was gently pushed open, and a familiar voice rang out. Is President Su awake? Su Zixi trembled slightly. Turning her head, she saw me standing right at the doorway, holding a glass of warm milk. In the dim lighting, it looked as if I was coated in a soft, gentle glow. My clear eyes were gazing warmly at her, for a split second. Su Zixi truly thought she was dreaming. It wasn't until I walked right up to her bedside that she finally snapped out of her daze. Chunan, how are you? I set the glass of milk down and looked at her in confusion. How am I what? Nothing. Su Zixi turned her head away. She desperately wanted to ask me again if I had truly broken up with Xie Muya, but as the words reached her lips, she suddenly felt there was no need to ask anymore. Regardless of whether Xie Muya and I had really broken up, she was going to treat it as if we were completely done. An awkward silence hung between us for a moment before I slowly spoke up. Since President Su is fine now, I'll be taking my leave. Su Zixi subconsciously sat up and grabbed her phone. The driver and I will take you back. I cast a glance at her. Did President Su forget what you promised me earlier? It's just for tonight, she insisted. Don't worry, I won't go back on my word. Previously, I could never figure out why she always insisted on escorting me back every time I finished a treatment. Why was she treating me so well? It wasn't until I heard Li Yuan's words that the mystery was finally solved. Su Zixi's devotion wasn't just out of gratitude for me saving her life back then, and it wasn't just because I was curing her migraines. It was out of overwhelming guilt. That was why she wanted to do everything in her power to make it up to me. Snapping back to reality, I looked at her with complete sincerity. President Su, I remember back at the beach you asked me if I had lived well these past 5 years. And I answered that I lived very well. The past is in the past, and I am still alive and breathing today. There's absolutely no need for President Su to feel like you owe me for what happened back then. You don't owe me anything. Strictly speaking, I'm the one who deceived you. If anything, I owe you an apology. Then I suddenly pulled her into a tight embrace. I hope that from now on, President Su can completely let go of the past and live just as well as I do. Even better than me. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. After I left, Su Zixi stared blankly at the milk on the table. She didn't even like milk yet, she still picked it up and drank it down wildly. The next day, after finishing my classes at the university, I rushed straight to Yunhai restaurant to meet up with Gao Yihan and Bai Ruanan. I had originally imagined a chaotic scene of the two bickering the moment they met, but when I pushed open the private dining room door, the two of them were actually chatting happily. The atmosphere was surprisingly harmonious. The moment Gao Yihan saw me, he immediately rushed over. "Chunan, you're finally here. It's been so long, man. I missed you to death." Seeing this, Bai Ruanan rolled her eyes hard at him. "Chat, it's barely been a week. You call that a long time?" Gao Yihan glared back over his shoulder. "The brotherhood between me and Chunan isn't something you could possibly understand." Bai Ruanan practically died laughing at that. "When my brother and I were playing together, you were probably still in some remote corner playing with mud." Seeing how quickly their attitudes had flipped, I hurriedly pulled Gao Yihan down into his seat, looking at him in utter confusion. "Yihan, why did you suddenly come to Northern City?" "It's for work," he replied. Bai Ruanan said she could introduce me to some top-tier business tycoons for an interview, so here I am. Gao Yihan let out a heavy sigh of defeat. "A few days ago, I accidentally messed up a few guest interviews. The editor-in-chief gave me a final ultimatum. If I can't secure a heavyweight interview this time, I can march straight to HR and hand in my resignation." I cast a surprised glance at Bai Ruanan. Being stared at by me, she shifted uncomfortably. "Brother, why are you looking at me like that?" "I only agreed to help him out of respect for you." "Yeah, speaking of which, I really have to thank Chunan," Gao Yihan said, giving Bai Ruanan a deeply meaningful look. "If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have bothered to help me that night." The three of us ate and chatted happily. I glanced down at the time. It was already 8:20 p.m. It was time for me to head over to Su Zixi's place. But right as I reached the door, I couldn't help but look back at the two of them with worry. Gao Yihan just flashed a cheeky grin. "Don't worry, Chunan. I still need her help. I wouldn't dare pick a fight with her." Hearing that, I finally breathed easy. "All right, when you guys are done, just head back to my apartment to sleep. The keys are under the floor mat." When I arrived at the Su family villa, Su Zixi was in the middle of a phone call. The moment she saw me, she quickly hung up and waved me over, gesturing for me to sit down and have a drink first. I didn't stand on ceremony, picking up a glass of iced black tea fruit juice from the coffee table and taking a sip. Watching me sitting right there in front of her, Su Zixi's mood inexplicably brightened. Seeing that she hadn't moved, "Do you have any idea what signing this means?" "It means the company you built with your own two hands will no longer belong to you." But Su Zixi remained completely unbothered. "That depends on what is more important to me." For her, as long as it could make me let go of the past and willingly stay by her side, that was all she truly wanted. After staring at it for a long while, I took a deep breath and pushed the agreement firmly back to her. "President Su, you'd better put this away." Seeing the dead seriousness on my face, Su Zixi helplessly tucked the document away. "Chunan, if you ever change your mind, you can come find me anytime." I instantly felt a wave of absurd amusement. What on earth did I need her company for? I had absolutely zero interest in business. In that terrifying nightmare, Su Zixi truly had targeted the Shao family. But reality now was completely different from that dream. Smiling, I opened my acupuncture kit and looked at her. "President Su, I trust your sincerity. I believe you would absolutely never harm the Shao family." Hearing this, Su Zixi's heart violently skipped a beat. In that fleeting second, she desperately wanted this man standing in front of her to hold her. But in the end, she forcefully suppressed the overwhelming urge. After the treatment ended, I headed back to my apartment, but the place was completely empty. I glanced at the time. It was almost midnight, yet Gao Yihan still hadn't returned. Feeling suspicious, I gave him a call. On the other end of the line, Gao Yihan's words were slightly slurred. He had clearly been drinking. Chunan Ruanan drank way too much. "I'm escorting her back right now." "All right, I gotta go. My phone's about to die. I'll head back to your place in a bit." Reassured, I leaned back on the sofa to wait for him. But as I waited, I accidentally dozed off. When I jolted awake, It was already 2:30 in the morning. And Gao Yihan was still nowhere to be seen. I frantically dialed his number again, only to find his phone was completely turned off. Panicking, I quickly dialed Bai Ruanan's number instead. After a long while, a groggy Bai Ruanan finally answered the call. "Brother, what's wrong? Why are you calling so late?" I asked anxiously. "Yihan was taking you home tonight. Is he at your place right now?" On the other end, Bai Ruanan dazedly rubbed her forehead, her gaze landing complicatedly on the man sleeping soundly in her bed. "Yes, he's here. It was too late, so he just stayed over here." Hearing that, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. "All right, Yihan's phone is dead, so remember to help him charge it. Also, his flight is at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Make sure you wake up early to get him going. Don't let him miss his flight." After hanging up, Bai Ruanan finally came fully to her senses, and she literally wanted to die right then and there. Last night, Gao Yihan had helped her into the bedroom. Because she had drank so much, she accidentally tripped and fell right into his arms. She had struggled to stand up, but her legs gave out, and she instinctively pulled Gao Yihan, who was trying to help her, down on top of her. And in that chaotic moment, her soft lips accidentally brushed right against the man's ear. Gao Yihan's face had instantly flushed beet red. He had frantically tried to pull her up, but a completely drunk Bai Ruonan had just stared at the man beneath her and leaned down to kiss him. After that, things had completely spiraled out of control. Of all the horrible mistakes she could have made, she absolutely should not have slept with Gao Yihan. He was her brother's absolute best friend. If her brother ever found out, she was going to be lectured to death. Just as Bai Ruanan was drowning in regret, a rustling sound suddenly came from the bed. She turned her head, making direct eye contact with Gao Yihan. And at this moment, Gao Yihan looked even more panicked than she did. We both drank a lot last night. We're both adults, so let's just keep this between us. You absolutely cannot tell your brother about this." Gao Yihan didn't even dare to look Bai Ruanan in the eye. He knew exactly how drunk she had been last night. He himself had drank quite a bit too, but he was still somewhat sober at first. But later on, he didn't even know what happened. The moment Bai Ruanan kissed him, his lower body instantly took full control of his brain. If Chunan ever found out about this, he couldn't even imagine what kind of horrific death awaited him. Grabbing his jacket in a blind panic, Gao Yihan scrambled toward the door. I still need to go back and pack my luggage. I'm leaving first." Hearing this, Bai Ruanan stood up, her face burning bright red. "I'll walk you out." "No need." Gao Yihan sprinted out of there faster than a startled rabbit, even nearly tripping over his own feet halfway out. Seeing this pathetic display, Bai Ruan couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Gao Yihan, you stop right there." A sudden chill ran down his spine as he whipped his head around in total confusion. "What is it, my lady?" Bai Ruan's blushing face was entirely covered in a bright smile. "Next time you come to Northern City, remember to tell me. I'll pick you up from the airport." Just like Gao Yihan had said, they were both adults, and more importantly, they were both single. If he actually became her boyfriend, her brother probably wouldn't have any objections. The next day, after sending Gao Yihan off, I suddenly spotted a familiar figure downstairs in my apartment. As our eyes met, both of us froze for a solid 2 seconds. Zixi offered a soft smile. "Morning, morning." I didn't question why she had suddenly appeared here, but politely asked, "Have you eaten breakfast yet?" Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future, realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family. I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. I didn't question why she had suddenly appeared here, but politely asked, "Have you eaten breakfast yet?" Su Zixi waved her hand. "Not yet." "Do you want to eat together?" Then the two of us headed to a nearby breakfast shop. Seeing a beautiful, elegant woman standing next to me, the shop owner couldn't help but take a few extra glances and joked, "Chunan, brought your girlfriend to eat breakfast, huh?" Hearing this, I was instantly flustered. "She isn't." "Boss, don't talk nonsense." Standing next to me, Su Zixi's face flushed a deep red when she heard the word girlfriend, but deep down she was incredibly happy and delighted. After the food was served, Su Zixi barely ate a single bite. Instead, she just rested her chin on her hands and stared at me the entire time. Her intense gaze made my heart flutter in absolute panic. I didn't even dare to lift my head, feeling like I was sitting on pins and needles for the entire meal. When I finally finished eating, Su Zixi tossed out a quick goodbye and fled the scene like a frightened rabbit. She left me standing there completely bewildered. Has this woman completely changed her personality or something? Later that day at noon, while eating lunch with Bai Ruanan, I looked at her and cleared my throat. "Ruanan, what do you think of Su Zixi?" Bai Ruanan, who was busy eating, answered rather absent-mindedly. "She's all right." I paused awkwardly. "Then what if someone like her was your girlfriend?" Hearing this, Bai Ruanan instantly became alert. "Whose girlfriend? Brother, just because you've been single for a long time, don't tell me you're starting to think everyone looks attractive." "Su Zixi is actually quite beautiful," I said, "and she's successful in her career. She really fits my expectations for a girlfriend. Bairu Onan looked as if she had just been struck by lightning. Brother, are you being serious? But I just waved my hand dismissively. Don't worry about whether it's true or not. Just answer my question. Bairu Onan looked incredibly conflicted. But after thinking for a moment, she answered seriously. If someone like Zixi became your girlfriend, she'd probably be really good at taking care of you. Even though she looks super cold on the outside after knowing her for so many years, I can somewhat guess her true personality from how she handles things. As long as you don't cross her bottom line or touch upon her core principles, she would probably be incredibly tolerant and forgiving. And she would give you special attention. I remember this one time Liu Nyuan made a huge mistake in a decision that caused the company massive financial losses. Back then, the entire Phoenix company was in an uproar over it. Bai Ruanan continued. Everyone thought Li Yuanyan was definitely going to lose her position as an assistant, but Su Zixi didn't even reprimand her and even gave her a few days off to rest. Hearing this, I couldn't help but smile. It seems your evaluation of Su Zixi is even higher than mine. Then I slowly stood up. Take your time eating, I'm heading out. Bai Ruanan looked at me with deep concern. Brother, you don't actually have ideas about her, do you? A good horse doesn't turn back to eat the old grass, brother. But my steps were already light and brisk as I walked away, leaving Bai Ruanan sitting there in utter confusion. When I returned to my apartment, I was shocked to find an eviction notice plastered right on the door. Just as I was staring at it in total bewilderment, the landlord suddenly called, Chunan, my aunt sold the apartment. You need to pack your things and move out as soon as possible today. As the call abruptly ended, I stood completely frozen in place. I just went out for a bit. How did my house suddenly disappear? Left with no other choice, I had to call Bai Ruan and ask if I could crash at her place for a while. But right as I hung up the phone, Suzy suddenly popped out from behind me. She looked incredibly happy. Chunan, I heard you lost your house. You don't need to stay at Bai Ruanan's place. I'll take you to the Xiao family villa. Hearing this, I was extremely surprised. How did you know I lost my house? And isn't that your friend's house? Even though the owner is out of the country all year round, it's still not appropriate for me to just live there, right? But Su Zixi didn't care about any of that, dragging me outside without a second thought. I initially wanted to refuse, but then I realized staying there would actually make the acupuncture treatments much more convenient. Thinking it over, I agreed. Once we were both in the car, Su Zixi dialed Bai Ruanan's number. Tell Ruanan that you aren't going to stay at her place so she won't worry. If I promised I wouldn't, then I wouldn't. I sighed. And even if I need to tell her, what's the point of using your phone to call her? Su Zixi rolled her eyes at me. Whether you change your mind or not, you can only go to the place I arranged for you. Telling Ruan is just for her sake, so she doesn't get upset tomorrow and start an argument with me. Hearing that, I helplessly took the phone from her. Ruan, it's me. On the other end, Bai Ruanan was utterly confused. Brother? Why are you calling me from Su Zixi's phone? That's not important. Anyway, Ruan and I won't be staying at your place later. President Su found a place for me to stay. Uncle Shu, I understand. I'm moving into the Xiao family villa. Uncle Shu was so excited, he said ever since the young master and President Su visited the villa last time, he knew that sooner or later the young master would return. Hearing this, I was completely speechless. Walking through the main gates of the villa, I saw Li Yuanyuan standing by the door with a middle-aged man. Li Yuanyuan's attitude toward him was incredibly respectful. I'll have to trouble you this time, Dad. Please ensure Zixi's safety from now on. That single word, Dad, instantly left me dumbfounded. This man was actually Li Yuanyan's martial arts gym-owning father. Lianji's sharp gaze swept over me, his voice booming and straightforward. What is this man's relationship with President Su? Standing next to him, Li Yuanyuan didn't hide a thing. This is Zixi's future boyfriend. He's also the former young master of the Xiao family. Hearing the words young master of the Xiao family, Lianji couldn't help but look me up and down. For a fleeting moment, I suddenly felt as if I was being X-rayed. A few seconds later, Lianji withdrew his gaze and nodded in satisfaction. President Su has good taste. Such a handsome and elegant man, no wonder she's been thinking about him for 5 years. He even got lovesick over him. Standing nearby, Su Zixi blushed a furious red and quickly looked away. Meanwhile, Li Yuanyuan gave me an awkward, apologetic look. Young Master Xiao, please don't mind him. My dad is just like this. Even though I didn't know much about Lianji, I had heard rumors about him. He apparently had a stellar reputation and commanded deep respect within the martial arts circles. After the assassination attempt at the recent press conference, Li Yuanyuan had actually managed to hire her own father as a bodyguard. It showed how much she truly cared. Then, Su Zixi and I walked into the villa together, looking at the familiar layout that hadn't changed in the slightest. A complex wave of emotions washed over me. I never expected that even after 5 years, every single detail, down to the smallest ornament, would be exactly the same as the day I left. In the living room, all the belongings we had been forced to leave behind because they were too inconvenient to move were still there. In the old man's study, his most cherished books were neatly and spotlessly arranged on the shelves. Even the Barbie doll my older sister loved so much was still sitting perfectly in its place. It felt as if they were quietly waiting for their owners to return. My own room hadn't changed at all either, but somehow it felt like it had been imbued with a fresh sense of life. After leaving the Xiao family villa, Zixi and I got back into the car. On our way to the university, Lianji had the driver suddenly hit the brakes right in front of the Su family residence. I haven't seen Yuanyi in a long time. I'm going in to see him. Inside the Su family villa, Su Yuanyi was quietly reading the newspaper. Seeing the three of us walk in, he looked completely surprised. Why did you all come together? It's all because of your granddaughter, Lianji grumbled. My daughter was worried about Zixi, so she asked me to come help keep an eye on her. Su Yuanyi nodded thoughtfully. Then he stood up and smiled kindly at me, waving his hand. Chunan, this old man really has to thank you and your father this time. Not only did you handle the company's recovery matters, but you even made a special trip to Northern City to teach me how to properly use my prosthetic leg. Ever since I examined Su Yuanyi's leg injury that day, I had called my old man to tell him about the meeting. Hearing that Su Yuanyi had personally apologized for what happened back then, Xiao Kangan said he really wanted to see him again. I honestly had no idea about any of this. The old man had never even mentioned it to me. However, I was genuinely happy for Su Yuanyi from the bottom of my heart. Once you completely get used to it, running and climbing mountains with that prosthetic won't be a problem at all. You'll basically be just like a normal person. Standing to the side, Lianji picked up a cup of tea and took a sip. It's not my place to say this, but all these years, why did you refuse to wear a prosthetic? Why did you only agree to wear it after young Master Xiao told you to? Su Yuanyi laughed awkwardly. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Su Yuanyi laughed awkwardly. You know exactly how Zixi was acting all those years. How could I possibly be in the mood for it? But now, things are different. Then he looked at me deeply. His gaze was filled with deep gratitude and profound emotion. Chunan, uncle, is truly so happy that you came back, and that you and Zixi can be together. Sitting beside him, Su Zixi's face flushed completely red. Grandpa, stop talking, Chunan is going to get embarrassed. Hearing this, I looked completely bewildered. When did I ever get together with Su Zixi? But left with no other choice and not knowing what to say, I could only pretend to be calm as I poured tea for him and Lianji. Your good days are still ahead of you. Lianji chimed in, though I couldn't tell if he was setting me up or what. He let out a helpless sigh. Your granddaughter already has a husband. Soon you'll just be waiting to hold your great-grandchildren. Just look at my son and daughter, they're still absolute disappointments. Hearing Lianji's words, my face instantly burned red. What husband? What great-grandchildren? This is completely ridiculous. Su Yuanyi was so incredibly happy he couldn't stop smiling. Xingyang and Yuan Yuan will probably find someone soon too. You can't rush fate when it comes to the kids. After leaving the Su family villa, Suzik shyly turned her head to steal a glance at me. Coincidentally, our eyes met. In that deep, silent gaze, the distance between us slowly began to close. But right at that moment, a rough voice suddenly boomed from behind us. Lianji was staring straight at Su Zixi. President Su, President Gu is waiting for you. After you treat President Gu to a meal, you two lovebirds can go back and be as affectionate as you want. You can be affectionate for as long as you want, it's fine by me. Hearing this, Su Zixi and I instantly flushed completely red. This Uncle Li was far too blunt with his words. I looked up at Lianji. Uncle Li Zixi is a girl. You should be mindful of her reputation. Hearing this, Lianji instantly laughed out of sheer anger. So young Master Xiao thinks I'm just an uncultured brute? That I reek too much of the martial world? I respectfully waved my hands. No, Uncle Li. You even dared to have Yuan Yuan ask me to come help watch over your wife. Is there anything you wouldn't dare do? Hearing this, I was completely stunned. When did I ever ask Li Yuan Yuan for that? And what is this about a wife? Lianji let out a cold snort. President Su, you tell me. Were my words out of line? At this point, Su Zixi was already so shy she was practically dizzy. She could only repeatedly mumble, not out of line, not out of line. Lianji's eyebrows practically flew off his forehead. See that, young Master Xiao? Even your wife says I wasn't out of line. Why are you talking so much? Once we got into the car, I turned my head and whispered to Su Zixi, who is President Gu? Su Zixi turned to look at me. Uncle Li's friend's son Gu Baihe. When Uncle Li was young and in Northern City, he was Gu Baihu's father's personal bodyguard. Even though their relationship was technically master and servant, they treated each other like brothers. The Gu family of Northern City used to be a prestigious and powerful family, but it's lonely at the top. Ever since Du Tianxi was assassinated and passed away leaving behind only his widow and orphan, their family circumstances rapidly declined. On top of that, their enemies deliberately targeted them, making the Gu family's life incredibly difficult for a time. Back then, the Gu family relied entirely on Lianji's support to stay afloat. Only later did they finally manage to stand on their own 2 feet again. Are you close with him? I asked, purely out of casual curiosity. If Su Zixi was taking the initiative to treat him to a meal, Their relationship had to be pretty good. Zixi gave me a deep, meaningful look. I don't know him, but I absolutely have to treat him to this meal. Speaking of which, you and I should both be thanking him. Back when I was introduced to go to Jiang City to see director Shui for my treatment, that was all thanks to Gubai He. He has a friend who works as a doctor at your hospital. I nodded in understanding. So that's how it is. In that case, you really do have to treat him to this meal. If it weren't for this Gubai He, Zixi and I probably never would have met again. Because of this connection, when I finally met Gubai He, I couldn't help but take a few extra looks. The man standing in front of me had an incredibly gentle aura. He didn't give off an ounce of pressure, and he naturally made people feel a sense of goodwill toward him. But when Li Yu and Yen introduced us to each other the moment he heard the name Xiao Chunan, Gubai He instantly froze. Beads of cold sweat instinctively formed on his forehead. Mr. Xiao, do you have any relation to the former Xiao family of the Northern City Xiao Corporation? Hearing this, I was utterly confused. What's wrong? That's my family. Gubai He's face instantly went deathly pale. He looked as if he desperately wanted to say something, but in the end, he swallowed his words. He just stared at me deeply for a very long time. Throughout the meal, Gubai He seemed completely distracted. He kept stealing glances at me, his gaze incredibly complex. If I hadn't been absolutely certain I had never met him before, I would have thought we knew each other. Why else would he look at me with those kinds of eyes? Even Lianji, who was sitting next to us, noticed something was off. Bai He, do you know young Master Xiao? Gubai He finally snapped out of his daze and forced a smile. I don't. I just thought Chunan looked quite handsome. Hearing this, I instantly felt a shock. Good lord, is he into me? Lianji couldn't help but chuckle. You're not bad looking yourself compared to young Master Xiao. If you keep staring at him, President Su is going to get jealous. After the meal ended, Lianji arranged for Li Yuan to take Gubai He back to the martial arts gym. I might not have time to entertain you these next 2 days. I'm President Su's bodyguard now. I can't wander too far. Gubai He nodded. Uncle Lee, go ahead and do your work. I've been here so many times, you don't need to go out of your way for me. I just came to Northern City for a vacation anyway. It's a good chance to look around. I stared at him intently until he and Li Yu and Yen got into the car and drove off. Seeing my expression, Zixi sighed meaningfully. They're already gone and you're still looking. Do you really like him that much? Hearing this, I found it somewhat hilarious. He's a guy. What does it matter if I look at him? Zixi angrily puffed out her cheeks. That wasn't just looking. That was clearly undisguised affection. It was practically overflowing from your eyes. Lianji, standing nearby, burst into laughter. You two were practically admiring each other at the dinner table. If you weren't both men, I would have thought it was love at first sight. After getting into the car, Zixi leaned out and looked at me. I'll come find you at Yushui Bay tonight. I nodded dazedly. I thought my brief encounter with Gubai He would be the only time we crossed paths, but that very night Gubai He actually walked straight into the Xiao family villa. I was completely baffled. Mr. Gu, what brings you here so late at night? Gubai He was sweating profusely, looking incredibly anxious. Chunan, do you happen to have an older sister named Xiao Zero? At the mention of Xiao Zero, Gubai He looked deeply ashamed. Is she doing well right now? I was taken aback. My sister is doing fine. Do you know her? Gubai He forced a painful smile. I do. We could be considered friends. Then, after hesitating for a long time, he finally asked in a soft voice, is your sister married? Now I was even more confused, but I answered truthfully anyway. No, she doesn't even have a boyfriend. As soon as the words left my mouth, Gubai He frantically pulled a silver ring from his pocket. Chunan, could you please give this to your sister for me? Ask her if she still remembers. If she still remembers and if she's willing to see me, I can go find her. I'll be staying in Northern City for 3 or 4 days. If she doesn't remember, then please just throw it away for me. With that single sentence, Gubai He didn't linger for even a second. He immediately turned and walked away. Staring at the ring in my hand, I suddenly remembered my sister used to wear a ring on her ring finger that looked exactly like this one. I immediately snapped a photo of it and sent it to Xiao Zero. Do you still remember this? The very next second my sister called me, her tone was even more urgent than the ringtone itself. Chunan, how do you have that ring? This completely confirmed my suspicions. Gubai He and Xiao Zero definitely had some complicated history together. I quickly explained everything. It's a long story. Basically, I met Gubai He. He said if you're willing to see him. Before I could even finish my sentence, Xiao Zero fiercely cut me off. Gubai He is in Northern City right now. What did that scumbag tell you? Tell me you didn't tell him about the Xiao family's situation in Jiang City. I didn't, I replied. He doesn't even know you're in Jiang City. I was filled with burning curiosity. What exactly happened between you and Gubai He? Xiao Zero's voice was deathly cold. I don't know him. Just stay out of this. I will personally come to Northern City tomorrow. At 5 p.m. the next day, I received a call from Xiao Zero. When I hurriedly arrived at the address she gave me, I was absolutely dumbfounded by what I saw. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future, realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family. Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. When I finally rushed to the address she gave me, I was absolutely dumbfounded. Aside from a single bed, the entire apartment was practically empty. Xiao Zero had changed into a set of worn-out loungewear, looking completely nonchalant. "Send my address to Gu Baihe. Tell him to roll over here himself." I was instantly left speechless. "Sister, is it really appropriate to tell someone to roll over here to see you?" Xiao Zero glared at me angrily. Why wouldn't it be? The things between him and me aren't as simple as you think. Since I really didn't understand anything about their past, I had no choice but to pull out my phone and call Gu Baihe. As the phone rang, I felt incredibly anxious, terrified that he would refuse to come. But to my complete surprise, he agreed the moment he picked up. "Chunan, wait for me. I'm heading over right now." Gu Baihe arrived incredibly fast. The moment he walked through the door, his eyes immediately locked onto Xiao Zero, who was sitting on the bed staring back at him. Gu Baihe lowered his head, his face full of profound guilt. But Xiao Zero merely shot him a single freezing glance before turning her head away. Not even bothering to look at him again, Gu Baihe slowly walked over to her side. "Ruru, stop eating hamburgers. Come out and have a proper meal with me." It was an incredibly normal and caring sentence, but Xiao Zero's face instantly twisted with anger. "Save it. A lowly woman like me doesn't deserve a meal bought by you." Then Xiao Zero let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Gu Baihe, if you only came to see me just to brush up your presence in front of me, then you can get out right now." I stared at Xiao Zero in absolute shock. What on earth was wrong with her today? Was this really the gentle, caring older sister I knew? Seeing the atmosphere turn completely toxic, I hurriedly grabbed Gu Baihe's arm. "Baihe, let's go. I'll treat you to a meal. Whatever you two need to say to each other, wait until she calms down first." Gu Baihe cast one final longing look at Xiao Zero, but in the end he didn't say a single word. Once we arrived at a nearby restaurant, Gu Baihe forced a painful smile. "I'm sorry, Chunan, I owe you an explanation." Hearing this, I was completely confused. "What do you mean?" Gu Baihe's face was filled with utter sorrow. "I owe you an explanation. Your sister Xiao Zero and I, we used to be lovers. Through a series of bizarre coincidences, they had met and eventually fallen deeply in love. During the year, their love burned the brightest. They had even planned to get married. And that ring was originally my engagement ring. But man proposes, God disposes. On the very night before they were supposed to register their marriage, Gu Baihe received a call that his father was critically ill. He had to fly out of the country that very same night. Xiao Zero had accompanied him to the airport, crying her eyes out. They promised each other that the moment he returned, they would go straight to get their marriage certificate. But I was never able to go back. His father was the absolute pillar of the family. The moment something happened to him, the family's entire foundation began to crumble. In a desperate bid to save the Gu family, Gu Baihe's mother arranged a political marriage for him. Left with absolutely no other choice, Gu Baihe sent Xiao Zero a single email. "Let's break up, I'm getting married." The devastating blow Xiao Zero suffered alone in the country was unimaginable. During this, my heart instantly flared with burning rage. "Then why didn't my sister ever go looking for you?" Gu Baihe lowered his head in deep shame. "She probably wanted to, but I never once told her my family was in Northern City." Blinded by love, Xiao Zero only knew his name. Aside from that, she knew absolutely nothing about him. After sending that final email, Gu Baihe had never logged into that account again. He had brutally severed all contact, changed his phone number, and completely vanished from Xiao Zero's life. I slammed my hand on the table and stood up furiously. "Then did you actually go and marry someone else?" "I didn't." Later on, my dad woke up. The family's collapsing situation was finally stabilized. But by the time Gu Baihe returned to the country to find Xiao Zero, he discovered she had already graduated, and her old phone number had been disconnected long ago. Because they had never spoken about their families while they were together, all Gu Baihe knew was that she had a mischievous younger brother named Chunan. But where on earth could he possibly find her with just a name? Until a few years ago, when I saw the news online that the Xiao family's Hongyuan Corporation had gone bankrupt and that the young master, Xiao Chunan, had passed away. He had rushed to Northern City almost instantly. But he only found that the Hongyuan Corporation building was completely empty, and the Xiao family was nowhere to be found. Even the Xiao family's ancestral home had been sold off. Utterly devastated, Gu Baihe logged into that old email account from years ago, and inside he found a single unread email. The timestamp showed it was sent just minutes after he had sent his breakup email. Xiao Zero had replied with only 2 sentences. "Baihe, my father is Xiao Kangan, the chairman of Northern City's Hongyuan Corporation. If you need a wealthy family to marry me, please Baihe, marry me." At this point, Gu Baihe raised his head and looked at me, tears in his eyes. "Just being able to see Roro again, I am already so incredibly happy. It's all my fault. I owe her far too much, and I hurt her far too deeply. I don't blame her at all for speaking to me like that." At this moment, my heart was a chaotic mess of emotions. No wonder Xiao Zero reacted so violently back then when the Xiao family wanted to move away from Northern City. So it was all because of Gu Baihe. After a long, heavy silence, Gu Baihe pulled a bank card from his pocket. There is some money in here. Tunan, please pass this on to your sister for me. Her stomach isn't good, tell her not to keep eating those unhealthy foods. Gu Baihe paused for a moment. If Ruru wants to start a business or do something else, the money in here is more than enough for her starting capital. Holding that card in my hand, I was suddenly reminded of something from many years ago. I had once given Li Yuan a 3 million yuan, a 3 million check, telling her to find some excuse to give it to Su Zixi. Those past events and the scene playing out right in front of me were just too incredibly similar. On the way back, I casually asked a question. Uncle Li mentioned before that you were the one who recommended Zixi go to Jiang City to see Director Huo for treatment. What was your friend's name again? Gu Baihe turned to look at me with a faint smile. Her name is Xie Muya, but she's already resigned from that hospital. Chunan, do you know her? Instantly, my footsteps came to a dead halt. I wanted to ask where Xie Muya had gone, but as the words reached my lips, I felt there was no point in asking. After all, Xie Muya and I had already broken up. Where she was now, what she was doing, and who she was with had absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. Right at that moment, Gu Baihe's phone suddenly rang. Talk about a coincidence, we were just talking about Xie Muya, and she called. I tactfully stepped back. You take the call. I'll wait over there. Gu Baihe picked up the phone, looking a bit confused. Hello, Muya. What's wrong? Brother Baihe, the items I bought for Mr. Li are too large, and the martial arts gym staff won't let me in. You'd better come out to the gate and talk to them. Hearing the sound of car horns blaring through the phone, Xie Muya paused in confusion. Brother Baihe, are you not at the gym right now? I'm outside meeting a friend, Gu Baihe explained. I'll contact Uncle Li in a bit and have him sort it out. Then Gu Baihe smiled. Muya, guess who I ran into in Northern City this time? A former colleague of yours from the hospital. On the other end of the line, Xie Muya answered absent-mindedly. Oh really? What's his name? Gu Baihe cast a glance at me standing nearby and laughed. His name is Xiao Chunan. He used to work at that hospital too, though. It seems he doesn't know you. Hearing this, Xie Muya's grip on her phone instantly tightened. Her breathing unconsciously became rapid and shallow. Why is he in Northern City? Gu Baihe froze for a moment, thinking it over. I didn't really ask. But his girlfriend and his family are all in Northern City. Maybe he just came back to see them. On the other end of the line, Xie Muya fell completely silent before abruptly hanging up the phone. Seeing this, Gu Baihe looked thoroughly confused. Thinking that Xie Muya probably had some urgent matter to attend to, he didn't call her back. Soon, the two of us arrived beneath Xiao Zero's apartment. Gu Baihe stared blankly up at her window. Chunan, you head back first. I'll take this food up to your sister. These are all her favorite dishes. She can eat them later tonight when she gets hungry. Standing off to the side, I could clearly see that the two of them were still deeply attached to each other. Otherwise, they wouldn't have both stayed single all these years, perhaps giving them a little more time to be alone together. And letting them clear up all the misunderstandings from the past might actually be a good thing. After I left, Gu Baihe finally stepped forward and quietly knocked on the door. Seeing that it was Gu Baihe, Xiao Zero's face instantly turned freezing cold. What are you doing back here, you scumbag? Gu Baihe lowered his head awkwardly. Chunan asked me to bring you some food, and I also have something I need to say to you. Hearing this, Xiao Zero slowly turned around and walked back into the room. Gu Baihe hesitated for a moment before looking at her with absolute seriousness. Ruru, what happened back then? I didn't do it on purpose. I had my own unavoidable difficulties. But Xiao Zero just stared at him coldly. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog. Since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Xiao Zero just stared at him coldly. Wasn't it just a political marriage with a wealthy family? Did you really need to make it sound so high and mighty? Then Xiao Zero stepped closer to Gu Baihe, her eyes filled with absolute contempt. What's wrong? Can't your wealthy wife satisfy you? Or are you just missing the days when I served you so comfortably? Gu Baihe's face instantly flushed a dark red. It was then that he finally noticed the empty wine bottles on the table. Ruru, listen to me explain. I've been looking for you all these years, and I never got married. There is no wealthy wife. Hearing this, Xiao Zero completely froze. A single tear unconsciously slipped from the corner of her eye, but the very next second she furiously swung her hand at Gu Baihe. You damn scumbag. You ruined everything. And now you come here to tell me this? You played me once. Wasn't that enough? Do you think I'm going to fall for it a second time? Looking at the drunk and furious Xiao Zero, Gu Baihe was filled with profound guilt. Ruru, I'm so sorry. Back then, it was my fault. But before Gu Baihe could even finish his sentence, Xiao Zero suddenly leaned in and kissed him fiercely. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Xie Muya frantically rushed back into the villa. Xiang, book me a flight. I'm going to Northern City tomorrow. Standing nearby, Xie Chengwu immediately interrupted her. Muya, now is not the time to be getting caught up in romantic affairs. Wait until the Xie family's internal matters are settled. But I can't wait any longer. Xie Muya angrily threw her bag onto the sofa. Brother Baihe saw him. He said he has a girlfriend. I have to go find him right now. Whether you agree or not, I am going. Seeing that she absolutely would not be swayed, Xie Chengwu let out a helpless sigh. Then go quickly and come back quickly. Don't stay there too long and don't let the rest of the Xie family know you're there. After Xie Muya left, Xie Chengwu finished drinking his traditional medicine before finally speaking. Xiang, take a few men with you to Northern City. Help Muya out if necessary, and make sure that man stays far, far away from her. The next day, Zixi arrived at the Shao family villa bright and early. Since I was now living in Yushui Bay, which was quite far from the university, Zixi enthusiastically drove me to school every single morning before heading to her company. Right now, sitting in the passenger seat, I stared at a completely unknown number calling my phone. After hesitating for a moment, I finally answered. The voice on the other end was both familiar and foreign. Chunan, it's me. Let's meet up. Where are you right now? I'll come find you. Hearing Xie Muya's voice on the other end of the line, I immediately frowned. Forget it. I don't think we have anything to talk about. I'm sorry I'm busy right now, so I'll hang up. Seeing the deep frown on my face, Zixi turned to look at me in confusion. What's wrong? Why the bitter face? Feeling a bit guilty, I casually waved my hand. It's nothing. Just a telemarketing call. They insisted on meeting up with me. But Zixi continued to stare at me, her gaze filled with deep, probing meaning. However, in the end, she didn't say a word. I didn't take Xie Muya's call to heart at all. I didn't want to know why she was in Northern City, and I certainly didn't want to meet her for whatever reason she had. After all, there really wasn't anything good that could come of it. However, at noon, the moment I stepped out of the academic building, I immediately spotted Xie Muya standing quietly by the entrance. Seeing me walk out, Xie Muya hurriedly ran over. Chunan, just a few words. I'll leave as soon as I'm done. Watching the blood drain from Xie Muya's face, cold sweat beating on her forehead, I cast a helpless look at her. Miss Xie, whatever you have to say, please say it quickly. I have an experiment this afternoon. Xie Muya shyly looked around at the crowded area. Are you sure you want to talk here? If you don't mind, then I suppose it's fine. I pointed at my head in utter confusion, having absolutely no idea what she was trying to say, but an ominous feeling was already creeping up on me. Xie Muya looked at me, her eyes carrying an indescribable emotion. Chunan, back then, I pursued you for 4 whole years. Only then did you finally agree to be with me. Yet we haven't even been broken up for 3 months, and you already have a new girlfriend. Hearing this, I was completely speechless. Miss Xie, are you interrogating me? You know very well that we broke up. So if I get a new girlfriend, I don't think I need your permission. Xie Muya and I had officially dated for exactly 1 day before she dumped me. Strictly speaking, we could barely even be considered exes. I honestly had no idea what gave Xie Muya the right to interfere in my love life now. Xie Muya stared at me with complicated eyes for a very long time before finally whispering, Chunan, can you please just wait for me a little longer? It won't be much longer. Now I was completely speechless. I even wondered if I had heard her wrong. Xie Muya, do you even know what you're saying? I know this request is incredibly unfair to you, but I promise I will explain everything to you later. Xie Muya's voice grew desperate as she suddenly grabbed my hand. Chunan, please just wait for me. Give me a little more time. I promise I won't make you wait too long. If you know this request is out of line, then you shouldn't have said it. I forcefully yanked my hand back, feeling that Xie Muya was being completely unreasonable. Setting aside the fact that I already have a girlfriend, even if I didn't, there is absolutely no reason for me to wait for you. But Xie Muya stubbornly persisted. No. You're not the kind of person who can just throw yourself into a new relationship so quickly. If you're so desperate to get rid of the shadow my sudden departure cast over you, then I apologize to you. Ex-Muya had been by my side for 4 years. She probably understood my personality better than I did myself. But when it came to romance, I seemed to have a natural emotional block. Whenever the opposite sex showed interest, I had always remained completely indifferent, even somewhat repulsed. Since I didn't say anything, Xie Muya lowered her voice again. Chunan, when I left back then, I had no choice. I had to leave for that long. As for the reason why, I can't tell you right now, but just wait a little longer. I will definitely give you a proper explanation. Hearing this, I let out a helpless, bitter smile. Muya, your departure really didn't have any impact on me. Whoever I am with now, I am only following my own heart. I'm sorry. I really do have things to do. Excuse me. Just as I turned around to leave, I suddenly saw Zixi standing not too far away. Her beautiful face carried a terrifyingly cold expression as her deeply unpredictable gaze locked dead onto me. I was instantly horrified. How did Zixi track me all the way to the university? My luck today was truly beyond terrible. I quickly walked over to her, awkwardly scratching the back of my head. Why are you here? But Zixi just stared at me with an icy expression. The person who called you this morning was Xie Muya, wasn't it? I guiltily turned my head away. No, we just happened to bump into each other. So we chatted for a bit. But before I could even finish my sentence, Zixi violently grabbed my hand and dragged me straight toward the nearby restrooms. When I finally realized where we were, I was completely dumbfounded. Wait, this is the women's restroom. Su Zixi, what are you bringing me in here for? But Su Zix didn't say a single word. She forcefully dragged the hand that Shiemuya had just held over to the sink and began aggressively scrubbing it with soap. It wasn't until a full half-hour later that Su Zixi finally let go of my hand with a look of utter disgust. I am a clean freak, and I hate the smell of perfume in my car. Staring down at my hand, which had been scrubbed completely raw and red, I was instantly left speechless. Women truly are bizarre creatures. Meanwhile, the moment Shiemuya laid eyes on Su Zixi, recognized her instantly. Seeing Su Zixi coldly drag me away, Shiemuya's first instinct was to chase after us. But when she did, she saw me completely dropping my pride to coax and comfort Su Zixi. In that instant, Shiemuya's entire body went freezing cold, all the blood draining from her face. She had liked me for 4 whole years, yet she had never ever received that kind of treatment. Young lady, you should stop looking. Lianji had appeared out of nowhere, completely blocking Shiemuya's line of sight. Seeing Shiemuya's pale, bloodless face, Lianji actually felt a bit of sympathy for her. Little girl, young Master Xiao doesn't like you at all. You better give up and stop causing trouble for yourself. Hearing this, Shiemuya steadied her breathing and gritted her teeth. I absolutely do not believe she genuinely likes Su Zixi. Back then, when they were working together at the Jiang City Hospital, Xiao Chunan's attitude towards Su Zixi was nothing but pure disgust. She couldn't believe that Chunan would develop feelings for Su Zixi in such a short amount of time. Something she didn't know about must have happened to make him choose this path. Does it matter if you believe it or not? Lianji said ruthlessly. The two of them are completely willing and happy together. You're just an outsider, little girl. What are you trying to get involved for? The two of them. Outsider. Those words stabbed into Shiemuya's heart like physical needles. Her face grew even paler. Slowly, Shiemuya raised her head and looked straight at Lianji. Uncle Li, I am Shiemuya. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future, realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family. I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Slowly, Shiemuya raised her head and looked straight at Lianji. Uncle Li, I am Shiemuya. Chengwu must have mentioned me to you before. The gift for your 50th birthday celebration, Chengwu had me prepare it for you. You should have already seen it yesterday. Hearing this, Lianji was instantly shocked. Talk about the temple flooding the Dragon King's shrine. Family failing to recognize family. Because of her relationship with Xie Chengwu, Lianji's tone softened significantly. Since we're acquaintances then, as an uncle, I really should speak clearly to you. Young Master Xiao and President Su are doing perfectly fine together. Stop trying to force yourself between them. Hearing this, tears welled up in Shiemuya's eyes. I liked Chunan for 4 years. He had originally agreed to be with me, but Chengwu absolutely insisted I return to the capital. I had no choice but to go back. But Chunan clearly disliked Su Zixi before. Uncle Li, I really don't understand. I just want to know why he would get together with Su Zixi. The reason doesn't matter, Lianji sighed. What matters is that their relationship is very good right now. Lianji had his own reservations regarding the Gu and Xie families. Looking at Shiemuya, his gaze gradually became complicated. He let out a deep sigh and handed her a few tissues. Miss Xie, no matter what happened between you and Xiao Chunan in the past, it's all over now. You have to look forward. Eventually, there will be someone who can give you the happiness you want. That night, my sister Bai Ruanan and I went out to eat at Yunhai restaurant. Bai Ruanan looked at Xiao Zero in surprise. Sister Rao, your style changed so suddenly. Why are you wearing an old, worn-out shirt today? Xiao Zero casually rolled her eyes at Bai Ruanan. It's to match someone so he doesn't look too pathetic next to me. Hearing this, Bai Ruanan burst out laughing. What kind of logic is that? When has my brother ever looked pathetic? Even if my brother wore a burlap sack, he would still look like Eddie Peng. But the moment we reached the second floor, Bai Ruanan suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes were locked intensely onto a specific corner of the restaurant. Xiao Zero and I followed her gaze, and both of our expressions instantly shifted. Sitting by the window were Gubaiha and Shiemuya, sitting face to face and whispering something to each other. Perhaps sensing our stares, Shiemuya turned her head and our eyes met perfectly. Right at that moment, Bai Ruonan stormed over with a terrifyingly dark expression. The next second, she delivered a vicious slap right across Shiemuya's face. Shimuya, you actually had the nerve to come to humiliate him back then? How exactly did my brother offend you? You made him a laughingstock in the entire hospital. If you didn't like him, you shouldn't have started anything. You dated him for one day and broke up the next, claiming it was just a joke? Who does that? Are you even human? Shiemuya clutched her stinging cheek, not fighting back or saying a single word, as Bai Ruanan cursed her out. Seeing this, Gubaiha quickly stepped forward, pulling Shiemuya behind him, defensively. Miss, if there's an issue, we can talk it out. You have no right to hit people. Bai Ruanan furiously pointed at Gu Baihe. Get out of the way, pretty boy. This doesn't involve you. This is a personal grudge between my brother and Shiemuya. Before Bai Ruanan could finish, I quickly stepped forward and pulled her back. Gu Baihe stared blankly at me, then looked at the cold and detached Xiao Zero standing nearby. Chunan, what exactly is going on here? You and Muya. Before I could even speak, Shiemuya acted as if absolutely nothing had happened. She calmly picked up her bag. Brother Baihe, I don't know him. Let's go. Hearing this, Bai Ruanan was absolutely furious. Shiemuya, are you out of your mind? Say that again. You don't know my brother? Gu Baihe cast a bewildered look at me and Xiao Zero, then turned and followed Shiemuya away. Xiao Zero frowned as she watched the two of them disappear, then asked coldly, that woman and Gu Baihe, what is their relationship? That question completely threw me off. They should just be friends. As for what kind of friends they were, I honestly had no idea. Shiemuya was acting incredibly bizarre. Her attitude was impossible to read. At noon, she had lowered her pride completely, begging me to wait for her, but now she was claiming she didn't even know me. I had no idea what she was playing at. Sitting at the dining table, the atmosphere was incredibly heavy. Just thinking about Shiemuya made Bai Ruanan furious. And Xiao Zero's mood was equally terrible, clearly lost in thought. Just as I was trying to figure out how to break the tension, Xiao Zero lightly tapped my head. Dad called today. There are too many things to handle at the company, so I'm flying back to Jiang City tomorrow morning. Don't miss me too much. You're leaving tomorrow? I asked instinctively. But you and Gu Baihe finally reunited. Aren't you going to stay a couple more days to catch up? Hearing Gu Baihe's name, Xiao Zero angrily puffed out her cheeks. I have absolutely nothing to catch up on with him. Being fooled once was enough. Then, Xiao Zero flashed a mischievous smirk. Speaking of which, you moved into a friend's house. Which friend is it? A boyfriend or a girlfriend? Hearing this, I instantly felt a wave of panic. Jay, just a close friend, but Bai Ruanan, who was watching the show unfold, immediately snitched. My brother is living in a house arranged by Su Zixi. Instantly, Xiao Zero's gentle expression vanished, replaced by a deep frown. Didn't you come to Northern City for your medical studies? Why are you involved with Su Zixi again? 5 years ago, you went to such great lengths to fake your death. And the Xiao family gave up so much just to leave Northern City, and now you're telling me you willingly came back to treat her illness? Realizing she had misspoken, Bai Ruanan guiltily shrunk back. Sister Ru, this is all my fault. Did I just cause trouble for my brother? After learning the full story, Xiao Zero was even more furious. Who gave you permission to come to Northern City to treat her? And you're even living in a house she arranged for you? Xiao Chunan, I didn't realize you had become so utterly spineless. Being scolded so harshly, I didn't even dare to lift my head. Ever since we were kids, whenever my sister got angry, I would completely fold. Enough. I don't think you need to keep playing the role of young Master Xiao either. When I leave tomorrow, you're coming back to Jiang City with me. The moment the words left her mouth, 2 massive bodyguards appeared behind me, picking me up by the collar and dragging me away. The very next day, I was practically tied up and hauled back to Jiang City by Xiao Zero. When Xiao Konggan saw me, he looked pleasantly surprised. You brat. You finally decided to use your weekend to come visit your old man. But before I could even say a word, Xiao Zero coldly interrupted. He's capable of far more than just taking classes. He's even treating people's illnesses. In a few short sentences, Xiao Zero explained the entire situation. If I hadn't found out, who knows how long he would have kept this from us. Hearing this, Xiao Konggan's previously affectionate expression instantly turned dead serious. No wonder you called me not too long ago saying you ran into the Su Yuanyi. So you actually went and married into the Su family just to treat Su Zixi. You unfilial son, how could you hide something this big from me? At this point, no matter how much I explained, it wouldn't help. I had no choice but to tell the absolute truth. Back when I was begging for Bai Ruanan's sake, that was the condition I agreed to. I couldn't go back on my word, and I don't regret going to Northern City to find Su Zixi at all. Then, I raised my head and looked at Xiao Konggan and Xiao Zero with absolute seriousness. Dad, sister, I want to be with Su Zixi. I want to marry Su Zixi. On the flight back, I had thought about many things, including my own feelings towards Su Zixi. I didn't know exactly when it happened, but I realized my heart was seemingly beating faster and faster for her. This woman, who I had once despised so deeply, I was actually getting more and more used to having her by my side. Her smile made my long-sealed heart flutter with life once again, but the moment those words left my mouth, the relatively calm atmosphere in the room completely exploded. Xiao Zero was so shocked she literally collapsed onto the sofa. What did you just say? What do you mean, be together? I mean exactly what you think it means, I declared. I think I've fallen for her, and she likes me too. Bastard. Xiao Konggan furiously slammed his hand on the coffee table. Have you forgotten that nightmare? Have you forgotten how high a price the Xiao family paid just to leave Northern City? Whoever you want to be with, whoever you want to marry, I won't interfere. But that person absolutely cannot be Su Zixi. Xiao Zero was just about to speak when a servant frantically rushed in. Master, there's someone outside asking for the young miss. She says her name is Su Zixi. Hearing this, Xiao Zero shot up from the sofa in a blind rage. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Su Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future, realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge. And destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Hearing this, Xiao Zero shot up from the sofa in a blind rage. She actually dared to follow him all the way here. I'm going to tell her to get lost, but Xiao Kanggen's expression was incredibly dark. Ruru, let the girl in. Since she's already here, it's a good opportunity to make some things perfectly clear to her. For the first time in 5 years, Su Zixi was standing face to face with Xiao Kanggen and Xiao Zero. But the atmosphere in the living room was freezing cold. No one offered her a seat, yet Su Zixi stood there neither haughty nor humble, her attitude calm and respectful. Hello, Uncle Xiao. Hello, sister. Who is your sister? Don't try to play friendly with me. Seeing Su Zixi, Xiao Zero's anger flared even higher. Her eyes locked fiercely onto Su Zixi. Miss Su, you are a 1,000-year-old fox, so stop trying to play these little games with me. My brother already died for you once, and now you're hovering around him again, going to such lengths to trick him into being your boyfriend. What exactly are you trying to do? Hearing this, Su Zixi lowered her head in deep shame. I didn't trick him. I truly do like him. Like him? 5 years ago, when my brother confessed his love to you, I still remember the look of utter disgust on your face. And now you're telling me you like him? Miss Su Zixi didn't offer any excuses, utterly absurd. But Su Zixi didn't offer any excuses. She merely glanced at the person standing behind her. Li Yuan understood immediately. He stepped forward, handing over a business card and a stack of documents to Xiao Kanggen. Mr. Xiao, my name is Li Yuan. I am the Chief Legal Counsel for Phoenix Technology. All the legal procedures for these documents have already been completed. As long as Mr. Xiao signs them, they will take immediate legal effect. Xiao Kanggen took the documents, looking at Su Zixi in utter confusion. But as he read through the papers, his expression shifted drastically. Ruru, look at this. Xiao Zero initially looked at them with pure contempt. However, as she read the contents, a look of absolute shock washed over her face. It was an equity transfer agreement for Phoenix Technology, along with the deeds to every single piece of real estate and business the Xiao family had been forced to sell when they left Northern City 5 years ago, including the Xiao family's ancestral mansion. Su Zixi had bought them all back and was now voluntarily transferring them back to the Xiao family. This left Xiao Zero genuinely stunned. Su Zixi, are you serious? If I weren't serious, I wouldn't be here. Su Zixi replied calmly. Besides, these properties originally belonged to the Xiao family. I am simply returning them to their rightful owners. Xiao Kanggen and Xiao Zero exchanged glances, both finding the situation completely unbelievable. At that moment, Li Yuan couldn't help but speak up. Mr. Xiao, you can check the dates on those property transfer agreements. President Su didn't just decide to return these to the Xiao family now. From the very moment she bought those assets, she had already decided that one day she would return them to the Xiao family. Looking at the dates on the transfer agreements, Xiao Kanggen was shocked once again. Su Zixi had signed the transfer documents almost at the exact same time she bought the properties. At this point, Xiao Zero couldn't hold it in any longer and stood up. Su Zixi, why on earth are you being so good to him? Because I like him. Su Zixi answered without a single second of hesitation, looking at Xiao Zero with absolute sincerity. Xiao Kanggen and Xiao Zero were left completely speechless. If Su Zixi hadn't said it herself, they never would have believed it. While the two of them were still in a daze, Su Zixi suddenly pulled me into a tight embrace right there in the living room. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Watching the two of us holding each other so tightly, Xiao Zero suddenly felt a hollow ache in her heart. Su Zixi was willing to throw away everything she had just to be with her younger brother. And all those years ago, hadn't she been just as foolish of a girl? At noon, Su Zixi naturally stayed for lunch at the Xiao family home. Watching the two of us acting all lovey-dovey at the dining table, Xiao Zero frowned in disgust. Back then, someone said they were going to bring their girlfriend home for dinner, and Dad and I ended up waiting for a very long time. I smirked mockingly at Xiao Zero. Well, at least I actually found someone. There's a certain someone who still hasn't found anyone yet. Because of what had just happened, Xiao Kanggen's attitude towards Su Zixi had taken a complete 180-degree turn. During dinner, he even offered to let Su Zixi stay the night and suggested she head back to Northern City with me the next morning. That afternoon, I arranged to meet Gao Yihan for dinner. When he saw Su Zixi, Gao Yihan's eyes practically lit up. This is your new girlfriend. Not bad, Shunan. You move fast. Then, he looked Su Zixi up and down with genuine admiration. By the way, sister-in-law, I haven't even asked your name yet. Su Zixi politely waved her hand. My name is Su Zixi. I work at Phoenix Technology. Hearing the name, Gao Yihan let out a confused, "Oh, your name sounds exactly like the CEO of your company. Is it just the same pronunciation?" She's also named Su Zixi. Seeing his clueless expression, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. She is the CEO. Hearing this, Gao Yihan shot out of his seat. No way, bro. You actually managed to get President Sue as your girlfriend. Do you have any idea she is my absolute idol? She's the ultimate dream interview for every single financial journalist out there." Then he looked at Sue Zixi with stars in his eyes. "President Sue, if you have the time, could this lowly brother of yours do an interview with you? I know you always keep a low profile. We don't have to use photos. A text-only article is totally fine." Sue Zixi looked at me, clearly asking for my permission. "It's fine, but we're heading back to Northern City tomorrow morning. When you come to Northern City, we'll arrange a time for an exclusive interview." Hearing this, Gao Yihan excitedly pulled me into a massive hug. He even planted a loud kiss right on my cheek. "I love you, bro. You are literally my savior." Standing off to the side, Sue Zixi saw this and angrily puffed out her cheeks. She suddenly regretted agreeing to Gao Yihan's interview. After dinner, Gao Yihan very tactfully made himself scarce. Sue Zixi and I began aimlessly strolling down the street, but I never expected that we would somehow end up walking all the way to that familiar beach. Holding Sue Zixi's small hand as we walked along the sand, my heart was filled with a subtle, inexplicable sweetness and joy, and she felt incredibly at peace. After walking for a while, Sue Zixi suddenly looked at me in confusion. "Chunan, why exactly did you and Shiemuya break up?" Sue Zixi was incredibly curious about this. It seemed like everyone who knew me had a massive grudge against Shiemuya. The painful memory made me awkwardly scratch my head. Shiemuya pursued me for 4 years, but the very next day after I agreed to be with her, she resigned and completely vanished. She didn't even say a proper goodbye. The colleagues at the hospital were gossiping behind my back like crazy. At the time, I really wondered if there was something seriously wrong with me. Otherwise, why would the person I liked never like me back, and the person who liked me disappear the moment we got together? Hearing this, she stopped in her tracks. She tilted her head and looked at me with deep heartache. "Chunan, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that back then I didn't understand my own feelings, and I ended up hurting you. By the time I finally realized what love was, it was already too late. All I could do was spend 5 years pouring out my longing in front of your tombstone. Then when you found out I was still alive, why didn't you tell me you liked me? Why did you promise me that you would never step foot in my life again?" This question had also bothered me for a very long time. Sue Zixi had clearly liked me for 5 years. She had suffered through excruciating migraines and insomnia for my sake. Yet when she saw me, she didn't say a single word. She didn't even show a hint of emotion. She just turned around and went straight back to Northern City. If I hadn't taken the initiative to go find her later, for Bairuan N's sake, we might still be complete strangers right now. The sea breeze blew against our faces, making Sue Zixi's voice sound a bit distant. "Because you were living so well in Jiang City and I didn't want to bring you any more trouble. I just wanted you to be happy." Then Sue Zixi gently stroked my cheek, gazing at me with a shy, loving expression. "Chunan, when we get back to Northern City, will you marry me? Let's get married." Sue Zixi had liked me for 5 long, agonizing years. And now she had finally become my girlfriend. Yet she still felt deeply insecure, terrified that one day I would suddenly leave, that I would suddenly demand a breakup, that I would suddenly vanish from her world all over again. A piece of paper might not be able to bind a heart, but it was the ultimate proof of our relationship. Looking at her face, which had already flushed completely red. In the end, I still couldn't bring myself to say those words. The sea breeze blew gently as the two of us walked hand in hand along the beach. We were both lost in our own thoughts, yet there was a quiet, comforting sense of mutual understanding between us. I never gave Sue Zixi an answer to her question, and Sue Zixi didn't press me for one either. Perhaps for Xiao Chunan right now, getting married truly was too soon. In that case, she would just wait a little longer. Early the next morning, we returned to Northern City. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Sue family like a dog. Since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Sue Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Early the next morning, back in Northern City, Sue Zixi drove me to the university as usual. Just as I was about to get out of the car, I met Sue Zixi's gentle, tender gaze. "Chunan, come here for a second." Confused, I leaned over slightly, but before I could even open my mouth, Sue Zixi cupped my face and planted a soft, sweet kiss right on my lips. "See you tonight, husband." When we returned to the villa that evening, Sue Zixi did something incredibly rare. She put on an apron and insisted on personally cooking a romantic dinner for me. I chuckled helplessly and stood up, planning to go to the kitchen to help her prep. But Sue Zixi forcefully pushed me right back out of the kitchen. She shoved a bowl of freshly washed fruit into my hands. "Be a good husband and wait out here. Dinner will be ready soon." Conceding defeat, I munched on an apple and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. I stood there quietly, looking out at the city's night view while listening to the sizzling sounds coming from the kitchen. Unable to resist, I sneaked over to the kitchen door. Sue Zixi was cooking with surprising skill. Her expression was gentle and incredibly focused, exuding the warm, comforting aura of a loving wife. Right at that moment, Sue Zixi noticed my presence and playfully turned her head. Staring so intensely, do I really look that pretty when I cook? It was clearly meant to be a teasing remark, but completely missing the playful tone. I nodded with absolute seriousness. You do look pretty. The moment I said that, Zixi's chopping motion paused awkwardly. She quickly lowered her head and went back to chopping vegetables. A moment later, a pair of broad hands reached out from behind and gently wrapped around Zixi's waist. Startled by the sudden contact, Zixi turned around and looked at me in confusion. What's wrong, honey? Nothing. Just watching you cook made me think you looked incredibly beautiful, so I wanted to hug you. Then, I cupped her face and gently kissed her forehead. I'll wait for you outside. Take your time. Under my smooth, completely natural romantic assault, Zixi's face had already flushed a brilliant shade of red. Sometimes, Chunan really was like a seductive little demon effortlessly tossing her emotions into absolute chaos. And yet, I had acted exactly like an irresponsible scumbag dropping a massive bomb and then simply turning around and walking away. After dinner, I proactively took the initiative to clean up the kitchen, but suddenly, Zixi let out a gasp of surprise from the living room. I quickly dropped the dishes and rushed out only to find Gao Yihan standing in the living room, looking at me with intense resentment. Chunan, you absolute traitor. You didn't even tell me you moved. I had to beg Bai Ruanan for ages just to get her to tell me you were here. I scratched my head awkwardly. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back to Northern City? I would have gone to pick you up. Gao Yiyan let out a heavy sigh. Hearing this, I couldn't help but inwardly curse him out. I had been planning to take a nice shower and spend some quality, intimate time with Zixi. Now, instead of a surprise, this was just pure misery. Seeing the two of us bickering, Zixi couldn't help but smile. Husband, you two sit down and chat. I'll go to the kitchen and wash some fruit. The moment Zixi left, Gao Yihan leaned in close to me. Damn, bro, how long has it been? She's already calling you husband. Watching Zixi's busy figure in the kitchen, I smiled absent-mindedly. Seeing that I wasn't answering, Gao Yihan couldn't help but pry. So when are you two planning to tie the knot? Honestly, he didn't even expect me to answer. He knew exactly what my personality was like, incredibly slow to warm up and deeply passive. Dating might be fine, but when it came to actually stepping into marriage, however, I turned to look at him with absolute seriousness. If everything goes smoothly, the wedding should be very soon. But as for registering the marriage, that depends on whether Zixi is willing or not. I'm willing. Zixi walked out of the kitchen carrying a fruit platter, without even setting it down properly. She tossed the platter aside and threw herself directly into my arms. Husband, I'm willing. Whatever kind of wedding you want, we'll have exactly that kind of wedding. As long as it's you, I don't need anything else. I chuckled and gently patted Zixi's head. All right, then we'll start planning the wedding next week. Hearing this, Zixi slowly raised her head, her eyes brimming with happy tears. But sitting off to the side, Gao Yihan was completely dumbfounded. Bro, this really is lightning speed dating and a lightning speed marriage. You haven't even been in Northern City for a full month. You got a girlfriend and now you're about to have a wife? When I finally walked Gao Yihan to the door, he looked at me with deep sincerity, trying to offer some advice. Chunan, why don't you try living with President Su for a little while longer before thinking about marriage? After all, you've only known each other for a few months. It's just too soon. But I just smiled and waved my hand. It's not too soon. We've actually known each other since 5 years ago. Back then, I fell in love with her at first sight. I even confessed to her. Hearing this, Gao Yihan was instantly shocked. Yeah, actually confessed to someone? Knowing me for 5 years, he had always assumed I was the kind of person who was incredibly passive and slow in relationships. He never imagined I would actually take the initiative to confess my feelings. Thinking back to those days, I couldn't help but feel a wave of emotion. It wasn't just a confession. Back then, I chased after Zixi with everything I had, awkwardly trying with all my might to get her to like me. Even though things didn't work out as I hoped back then, achieving this perfect ending so many years later makes it all worth it. But after hearing this, Gao Yihan looked at me in absolute disbelief. Don't tell me you were rejected by President Su 5 years ago, and now, 5 years later, you actually fell for her again. Thinking about the time I had spent with Zixi recently, my heart swelled with warmth. Because she is someone worth my love, when it came to romance, Gao Yihan was completely at a loss for words. Normal people made sure never to fall into the exact same trap. He was planning to build a house and live in it forever. Meanwhile, back in the bedroom, Zixi was incredibly nervous. She tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. Eventually, she simply couldn't hold on any longer. Just as she was finally drifting off into a daze, the door was gently pushed open. Zixi instantly snapped awake, subconsciously holding her breath. Seeing that she was already asleep, I walked over to the side of the bed and gently tucked the covers around her. Bathed in the soft moonlight, Zixi's sleeping face looked incredibly sweet and peaceful. My heart fluttering, I couldn't resist leaning down and planting a soft kiss on her lips. Still pretending to be asleep, Zixi was so startled by the sudden kiss that her entire body went rigid. Just as she was about to sit up and respond, I actually turned around and walked away. But exactly 2 minutes later, I came back carrying another quilt. I carefully and quietly lay down next to her on the bed. I covered myself with the other quilt, keeping a distinct distance between us. Zixi took a deep breath, a surge of inexplicable frustration rising in her chest. Didn't he say he liked me for 5 years? Now we're lying in the exact same bed and he actually manages to hold back and do absolutely nothing. Even though my figure might not be as exaggerated as those celebrities and influencers, I still have curves where it counts. I'm not lacking in any department. My behavior truly felt like a slap in the face. It was as if I didn't even view her as a woman. Furious, Zixi abruptly sat up in bed. Xiao Chunan, do I completely lack any feminine charm in your eyes? Startled by her sudden outburst, I flinched. Whoa, what? Of course not. Then why aren't you sharing a blanket with me? And why are you sleeping so far away? The gap between us is big enough to fit an entire person. Hearing this, I looked completely bewildered. I was afraid of waking you up earlier. I thought you were asleep, and half of that blanket was trapped under you. If I forcefully pulled it, it would definitely... Before I could even finish my sentence, Zixi couldn't hold back anymore and fiercely kissed me. The next morning when I woke up, I was the only one left in bed. Thinking back to how wild Zixi had been last night, my face instantly flushed red. A woman who had been lonely for too long was truly terrifying. After I washed up and went downstairs, I saw Zixi standing by the dining table, carefully laying out a thoughtful breakfast. Hearing my footsteps, Suzy turned to me with a gentle, affectionate smile. Husband, come eat. My legs uncontrollably trembled for a moment, but I silently walked over anyway. After finishing breakfast, my dad and sister flew in from Jiangxi. The two families gathered together to discuss the details of the wedding. After asking about countless minute details, Xiao Kangyan was still preparing to ask more questions. Dad, this is my brother and Zixi's wedding. Why are you asking so many questions? Xiao Kangyan shot her a fierce glare. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog. Since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future. Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Xiao Kangyan glared at her furiously. Zixi hasn't even complained. What right do you have to speak up? If you're so capable, then you go get married. Xiao Zero was instantly left completely speechless. Fine, ask whatever you want. If you want to ask questions until tomorrow morning, be my guest. Meanwhile, I was sitting cross-legged on the sofa, happily munching on an apple with a smile on my face. Seeing this, Xiao Zero's piercing gaze instantly locked onto me. We've been talking about you the entire afternoon and evening, yet here you are acting completely carefree, like an outsider to your own wedding. Feeling helpless, I shot Xiao Zero an exasperated look. Are you on your period or something? Why does everything piss you off today? Just as Xiao Zero and I were glaring daggers at each other, my phone suddenly rang. The moment I saw the caller ID, I immediately cleared my throat and answered. Brother Baihe. The instant Xiao Zero heard the name Brother Baihe, her entire body went rigid. Her expression unconsciously turned freezing cold. Chunan, do you know where your sister went? I was completely shocked. My first instinct was to tell Gu Baihe the truth, but I was terrified that my sister would never let me hear the end of it. After thinking for a second, I gave a vague response. Brother Baihe, wait a second. I'll have my sister call you right back. Hanging up the phone, I cast a helpless look at Xiao Zero. My tone was filled with complicated emotions. Brother Baihe has been waiting for you since noon. He is still waiting right now. Just call him back, he probably has something important to tell you. But Xiao Zero stubbornly puffed out her cheeks. It's almost 8 p.m. What could he possibly have to say to me? Tell him to leave. Just say your sister is busy. I was so angry I was practically speechless. It just takes a minute to make a phone call. You don't even have time for that. Xiao Zero casually tossed the half-eaten apple back into my hands. Of course not. Your sister is incredibly busy. With that, she plopped back onto the sofa and started scrolling through her phone, refusing to say another word. At that moment, I was truly furious with Xiao Zero's attitude. Left with no choice, I called Gu Baihe back and used some random excuse to brush him off. Once the two families had finished their discussions, Su Yueni arranged for his driver to take us to the Xiao family villa. On the way there, Xiao Kangyan, who already knew that the ancestral home had been bought back by Su Zixi, felt completely calm. But when he saw Xu Jiang, the Xiao family's driver, smiling and welcoming him at the door, and realized that almost nothing inside or outside the villa had changed in the slightest, a look of sheer disbelief washed over Xiao Kangyan's face. Even after so many years, the Xiao family's ancestral home was exactly as it had been. Not a single detail had been altered. Your room is exactly the same as it used to be, he marveled. Even the Barbie dolls from back then are still there. Looking at those specific dolls, Xiao Zero couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of attachment. Those dolls were secretly bought and gifted to her by Gu Baihe on her birthday, after he noticed how much she liked them. During those years, Xiao Zero had treated those dolls like absolute treasures. Deep down, she still harbored an extravagant hope that Gu Baihe would return and they would reconcile. But looking at those things now, Xiao Zero only felt it was incredibly pathetic. Sister, Baihe is still waiting for you at your old apartment. You really should go see him. He might genuinely have something important to say. Plus, you won't answer his calls and you even blocked his number. With a heavy sigh, I pulled the bank card out of my pocket. Here, this is the card Bai he gave you. The password is your birthday. There's a sum of money inside. He still thinks you're completely broke. He said you should make sure to eat properly. And if there's anything you want to do, the money inside is enough for your starting capital. With that, I placed the card directly on the table. If you don't want this card, then return it to him yourself. After I left, Xiao Zero stared at the card with a deeply conflicted expression. She sat in silence for a very long time. In the end, she picked it up and took a taxi to that rundown, dilapidated apartment complex. Meanwhile, Gubaiho was sitting silently by the door, his head lowered, lost in thought. The moment he heard footsteps, a flash of pure joy sparked in his eyes. He frantically scrambled to his feet. Gubaiho, are you truly that desperate for a woman? Xiao Zero sneered. Running over here to find me again and again, did I really make you feel that incredibly good? Gubaiho's emotional excitement instantly vanished. Ruru, you know I'm not here for that. I came to Northern City because of a work transfer. I essentially have a stable job now. If you want to work, or if you want to start something, I can help you. After hesitating for a moment, Guru, what I told you last time was the truth. I really never got married. I know I let you down in the past, and I don't expect your forgiveness right now. I just want to do something for you. But Xiao Zero's face was completely ice cold. She aggressively grabbed Gubaiho's hand and shoved the bank card right back into his palm. I don't need you to do anything. Take your things and get out of here right now. Clutching the card, Gubaiho had a million things he wanted to say, but the words remained trapped in his throat. He felt an overwhelming sense of guilt towards Xiao Zero, but of course his repeated visits weren't just driven by guilt. He desperately hoped to reconcile with her. But to say that out loud right now would just make him seem incredibly arrogant and completely delusional. Seeing Gubaiho standing there frozen in a daze, Xiao Zero impatiently frowned. Are you still not leaving? Are you hoping to let me make you feel good again like last time? Sure. Since you're offering yourself up for free, why the hell not? Thud. Gubaiho viciously punched the wall. Ruru, you really have changed. If treating me like this is just to get me to stop coming to see you, then you have your wish. I won't come here ever again. With those final words, Gubaiho turned around in absolute disappointment and walked away. Once everything outside had fallen completely silent, Xiao Zero slumped weakly against the wall, utterly lost. Tears unconsciously streamed down her face. She thought she had long since forgotten Gubaiho and their past romance. But when she saw him again, she realized her heart was still entirely his. The moment she heard he was in Northern City, she had desperately wanted to rush over and pull him into a tight embrace. But later, Xiao Zero realized that deep down, she truly deeply loved the very man who had hurt her. She missed his scent, she missed everything about him. She even had absurd, desperate thoughts stirring wildly in her heart. Xiao Zero knew perfectly well that once hurtful words were spoken, they could never be taken back. But if she didn't do this, Gubaiho would keep coming to find her, and Xiao Zero genuinely didn't know how much longer she could resist him. A relationship that was doomed to have no future was better off never starting again in the first place. At that thought, Xiao Zero could no longer hold back her tears and began sobbing uncontrollably. In the end, she had succeeded in making Gubaiho despise her. A few days later, I was sitting in a bridal boutique casually flipping through a magazine. Hearing a noise coming from the fitting room, I unconsciously looked up. Standing right in front of me was Zixi, wearing a breathtakingly beautiful white wedding dress. Led by the shop assistant, she slowly walked out of the fitting room. I stared at her completely mesmerized, so utterly stunned that I couldn't speak for a long time. Being stared at like that, Zixi felt a bit self-conscious. She looked at herself in the mirror with a worried expression. Doesn't not look good? It was only then that I snapped back to reality and awkwardly scratched my head. It looks beautiful. Hearing this, Zixi breathed a sigh of relief. You were staring at me so intensely I thought there was something wrong with it. Then she turned her head to speak to the shop assistant, but my gaze remained completely glued to her. It turned out that overwhelming happiness could actually make a person feel dizzy. By the time we finished dinner and returned home, it was already quite late. President Su, tonight is your final acupuncture session. Starting tomorrow, I won't have to come looking for you at night anymore. Hearing this, a faint blush spread across Zixi's face. That's true. Because starting the day after tomorrow, I'll be living at your place. September brought crisp autumn skies, an absolutely perfect day for a wedding. Inside the preparation room, I put on a custom suit for the first time in ages, looking impossibly handsome. Damn, Chunan. Gao Yihan handed me the rings and the bouquet, his eyes filled with genuine amazement. If I were a woman, I'd want to marry you. You are seriously the most handsome groom I've ever seen. I laughed and patted him on the shoulder. When you put on a suit like this, you won't look too bad yourself. Right at that moment, Xiao Zero frantically ran into the room. Chunan, Xie Muya is here. Hearing this, I was instantly shocked. My wedding with Zixi was kept extremely low profile. We only invited close family and friends. Not a single media outlet had been informed. Logically speaking, there was absolutely no way Xie Muya, who was all the way in the capital, could have possibly known. But then, I suddenly remembered the connection between Gubaiho and Xie Muya. Relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Sue family like a dog since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Sue Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. But then, I suddenly remembered the connection between Gubai He and Xie Muya. It seemed completely normal that Xie Muya would find out I was getting married. But for her to travel thousands of miles just to show up on my wedding day, that wasn't normal at all. What is she doing here? My heart sank slightly. Does Zixi know she's here? Not yet, Xiao Zero replied, rubbing her temples in frustration. Zixi is still in the dressing room getting her makeup done. Ruan blocked Xie Muya at the door and refused to let her in. But Xie Muya said she wants to see you. She has something to say to you. Looking at her attitude, it seems like if you don't go out and see her, she isn't going to leave. And she brought a lot of people with her. They're all lining the hallway outside. In a way, I suppose she's here as a guest to congratulate you. After thinking for a moment, I waved my hand. Go bring her in, and let Zixi know too. There's nothing between me and Xie Muya that Zixi can't hear. When Xie Muya walked in and saw me standing next to Su Zixi in her wedding dress, her hands instantly clenched into tight fists at her sides. Tears unconsciously welled up in the corners of her eyes. If she hadn't left back then, the person standing next to me today should have been her. She should have been the bride. Su Zixi very naturally linked her arm through mine. She swept a cold glance over Xie Muya. Miss Xie, didn't you say you absolutely had to see my husband? That you had something to say to him? You can speak now. Seeing the two of us standing so casually and intimately together, Xie Muya's eyes stung with sharp pain. The words she desperately wanted to say felt entirely blocked in her throat. She simply couldn't get them out. In the end, Xie Muya rubbed her eyes, and the words that left her lips were completely different from what she had intended. I just heard that Chunan was getting married, so I came to bring some wedding gifts. I hope you like them. But I just stood there in silence for a moment, my heart feeling incredibly complicated. No matter how miserably I suffered when she suddenly broke up with me and vanished. During those 4 years, she truly was a good girl. She was gentle, virtuous, and considerate, making many people around me incredibly envious. But all of that was completely meaningless now. Thank you, Muya. I also hope you can soon find a man who truly loves you. It was clearly meant to be a blessing, but hearing those words, Xie Muya's nose stung, and tears uncontrollably spilled from her eyes. Once again, however, in the end, she didn't say another word. She turned around and walked toward the door. As she passed by Su Zixi, she stopped and looked at her with a smile, but that smile looked incredibly forced and bitter. Congratulations, Zixi. You are truly very lucky. As the wedding march began to play throughout the hall, Su Zixi, holding her grandfather's arm, walked step by step toward me from the other end of the aisle. Su Yuani tightly grasped his granddaughter's hand, his smile so wide that every wrinkle on his face showed. Chunan, from now on, I am leaving my granddaughter in your care. The moment I took Su Zixi's hand, the officiate passionately read the wedding vows. And now the bride and groom will exchange rings. I gently held Su Zixi's ring finger and slid that beautiful, long-awaited ring into place. Every single guest in the hall watched the two of us with unblinking eyes. Everyone held their breath, waiting for this beautiful, emotional moment. The moment the rings were exchanged and our fingers intertwined, the entire hall erupted in thunderous applause. Bang! A sudden gunshot instantly shattered the warm, beautiful atmosphere of the wedding. Su Zixi let out a muffled groan of pain and collapsed right into my arms. I frantically caught her, but my hand felt thick, warm blood. In an instant, my face drained of all color. I practically went insane as I picked Su Zixi up and sprinted toward the back of the stage. When Su Zixi was rushed into the emergency room, I sat on the bench in the hallway, completely paralyzed. Staring down at my blood-soaked hands and my ruined suit, then looking up at the glowing red emergency sign above the doors, I felt as if my consciousness was being violently dragged away. I was dragged right back into that terrifying nightmare. At the very end of that dream, if the two of us were together, it would only lead to a brutal separation by death. We would be torn apart into the realms of the living and the dead. At the thought of this, my body began to tremble uncontrollably. Seeing me like this, Xiao Zero was instantly filled with deep worry. From childhood until now, she had never seen her brother look so completely terrified. His eyes were filled with nothing but absolute despair. Gao Yihan gently patted my shoulder to comfort me. Chunan, it'll be fine. President Su will definitely be fine. Meanwhile, back in the wedding hall, Lianji stared down at the assassin, who had already bitten down on a poison capsule and committed suicide. An unprecedented rage burned in Lianji's heart. He wanted nothing more than to hack the man into a million pieces. But when they finally uncovered the assassin's background, Li Yuanyuan simply couldn't believe her eyes. This person was actually one of the delivery men who had helped Xie Muya carry her gifts in earlier. And what Li Yuanyuan found even harder to accept was that the gun this man used was actually pulled straight out of one of the gift boxes Xie Muya had delivered. Meanwhile, after meeting us and dropping off the gifts, Xie Muya was aimlessly wandering along the beach alone. Her mind kept replaying the scene of Su Zixi. wearing that beautiful white wedding dress, being held tightly in my arms. Suddenly, dozens of heavily armed police officers rushed forward and surrounded her. It wasn't until she was brought to the police station that Muya finally realized she had been listed as the prime suspect in the attempted murder of Zixi. At this moment, after a grueling 8-hour wait, the emergency room doors finally swung open. The lead surgeon exhaustedly wiped the sweat from his forehead. The bullet missed her heart by barely 2 or 3 centimeters. The patient will need to remain under observation in the ICU for 4 or 5 days. If she can make it through these next few days safely, she shouldn't be in any life-threatening danger. But I remained in my blood-soaked suit, refusing to take a single step away from the ICU doors. I stood guard for 2 full days and nights, not saying a word, not eating a single bite. Whether it was Gao Yihan's gentle persuasion, Bai Ruanen's tearful pleading, or Xiao Zero losing her temper, I treated all of it as if they didn't exist. I absolutely refused to eat. In the end, left with no other choice, Xiao Kangen had to step in. I already asked the doctor. Zixi will very likely be transferred to a regular ward in the next 2 days. Look at you, you're covered in blood and filth. When Zixi wakes up and sees you like this, her heart is going to break all over again. Besides, if you collapse from exhaustion, it will agitate her emotions and hinder her recovery. Xiao Kangen sighed deeply and patted his son's shoulder. Go home with your sister first. Take a shower, change into some clean clothes, and eat a proper meal. Tomorrow morning, when you have some energy and look decent, then you can come back and see Zixi. All right? After a long, heavy silence, I finally stood up. But because I had been sitting for far too long, my legs instantly gave out, and I nearly collapsed. Seeing this, Gao Yihan simply bent down and carried me on his back all the way home. Once we got back, he found me a change of clothes, and terrified that something might happen, he even stayed right outside the bathroom door. While I was inside the shower, looking down at the wedding ring on my ring finger, still stained with dried blood, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore. I buried my face in my hands and broke down crying agonizingly out loud. Standing outside the bathroom door, listening to my hysterical, heartbroken sobs, Gao Yihan silently pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. When I finally walked out of the bathroom, my emotions were unnervingly calm. Without anyone needing to tell me or persuade me, I quietly ate a large amount of food. By the 5th day, Zixi was finally transferred out of the ICU and into a regular ward. And from then on, I absolutely refused to go home to rest. At night, I would either stand guard right inside her room or briefly rest my head on the edge of her hospital bed. On the 7th day of her coma, Zixi finally slowly opened her eyes. Overwhelmed with emotion, I pulled her into a tight, desperate embrace, feeling the warm, living heat radiating from her body. Meanwhile, Muya walked out of the police station in an absolute daze. Suddenly, a figure appeared right in front of her and handed her a tissue. Wipe your face, Miss Xie. But Muya viciously shoved the person away. Get away, stay away from me. Xiang let out a helpless sigh. Miss Xi, Boss Chengwu told me to bring you back to the capital. Boss Chengwu can forgive your willful and reckless behavior this time, but he absolutely will not tolerate you giving up halfway. He won't let his grand plan fall apart at the final hurdle. Hearing this, all of Muya's pent-up emotions instantly exploded. What the hell does his plan have to do with me? He almost made me a murderer. He made Chunan completely misunderstand me. Isn't that enough? What more does he want? But Zong's expression remained completely unbothered. Boss Chengwu always follows through on what he promises you. Miss Xie, just wait. Boss Chengwu will not disappoint you. The moment he said that, Muya's emotions suffered a complete collapse. Pointing a trembling finger at the man standing before her, relying on my status as her childhood friend, I had treated the eldest miss of the Su family like a dog, since we were young, even demanding she call me daddy every single day. Who would have thought that 10 years later, on the day Zixi went abroad to study, I would suddenly awaken memories of the future? Realizing that my years of disgusting behavior would eventually lead to my childhood friend taking revenge and destroying my entire family, I had immediately decided to stay as far away from her as possible. Pointing a trembling finger at the man standing before her, Muya cried out in agony. If his way of helping me win Chunan back is by murdering people, then he better stop right now. The fact that I haven't reported him is the absolute last shred of affection I have for him. From now on, he'd better stay out of my business. I am in charge of my own life. I will never listen to him again. And I am absolutely never going back to the capital. If he wants to take back the Xie family's assets from my sister, then he can go do it himself. Leave me out of it. Watching Muya's retreating figure, Xiang couldn't help but frown. Miss Xie still doesn't understand. Aside from returning to the capital, she has absolutely no other path left to take. After dinner, Zixi adamantly insisted that I go home to rest. She was already fully conscious and her injuries were no longer life-threatening. The rest was just standard treatment and waiting to recover. But I absolutely refused. I grabbed a blanket and laid it out on the hospital sofa. I'm staying with you for one more night. I won't stay tomorrow, I promise. Unable to stubbornly argue with me, Zixi had no choice but to let me have my way. But this was a hard leather sofa. Sleeping on it was definitely not going to be comfortable. Zixi tilted her head and looked at me. Is this how you've been sleeping these past few days? For the first few days when you were in the ICU, I went home to rest. I lied smoothly. Zixi's lips twitched, but she didn't say anything. What do you mean went home to rest? Liu and Yan had already told her everything. For the first 2 days, I had stood completely motionless outside the ICU, wearing that blood-soaked suit, refusing to eat or drink. I wouldn't listen to anyone's advice. Then Zixi's beautiful eyes darted around mischievously. Chunan, come here for a second. Thinking she needed to use the restroom, I quickly walked over, but the moment I got close, she suddenly grabbed me and pulled me into a tight hug. I completely lost my balance and tumbled right onto the edge of the bed. What? What are you doing, Zixi? Don't you know your injuries haven't healed yet? But Zixi just buried herself in my arms, her voice incredibly soft and gentle. I'm not doing anything. I just want a hug. Seeing her like this, I ultimately didn't move away, letting her hold me for a very long time. It wasn't until half an hour later, with Zixi still refusing to let go, that I helplessly and gently pushed her away. It's too late, you need to sleep. Only then did Zixi reluctantly loosen her grip. After turning off the lights, I pulled the blanket over myself and turned to face Zixi's direction. It was then that I realized Zixi was also lying on her side, facing me. The two of us stared at each other in the dark silence for a while. I didn't know how much time passed, but Zixi's breathing eventually grew steady. It seemed she had fallen asleep. I stood up and walked over to the bed, calling her name very softly. There was no response. She really was asleep. The moonlight outside the window spilled onto Zixi's bed, illuminating her beautiful, delicate face. Looking at her sleeping so peacefully, I solidified my resolve. Li Yuanyuan had said that this shooting incident was officially closed. But what she didn't know was this was far from over. Unless I completely removed myself from Zixi's world, as long as she stayed by my side, she would always be in grave danger. As Zixi recovered day by day, the day of her discharge was also rapidly approaching. Whenever I faced Zixi, I didn't show a single hint of my true thoughts. After finishing the discharge procedures, Zixi was standing downstairs at the hospital chatting with Li Yuanyuan. Seeing me approach, Li Yuanyuan smiled and waved. Your husband is here to pick you up. I'll be going now. After Li Yuanyuan left, Zixi turned her head and looked at me with a bright, playful smile. Husband, I'm all better now. Hearing this, I was instantly stunned. What do you mean? It means I can kiss you now. The moment her sweet, delicate voice faded, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed me. Initially, it was just a light, lingering touch, but it quickly evolved into a deep, passionate kiss. By the time she finally let me go, my old face was completely flushed red. Zixi looked at me, happily intertwining her fingers with mine. Let's go, husband. Let's go home. But the moment we got home, I immediately used the excuse that Xiao Zero was desperately looking for me and managed to escape from Zixi's overly affectionate clutches. Inside a cafe, I sat there looking completely devastated and lost in thought. My head lowered, unsure of what to do. Xiao Zero walked over with a confused expression and sat down across from me. What's wrong with you? Zixi woke up, didn't she? Why do you look so miserable? Suddenly, a terrifying thought flared up in her mind. Don't tell me Zixi's. I forced a painful, bitter smile. Sister, why are you so late? Didn't you say you'd be here in 30 minutes? Xiao Zero frowned in confusion. What exactly is going on? Why is your mood so messed up? Sister, I had that nightmare again. Hearing this, Xiao Zero finally breathed a sigh of relief. You brat, you scared me to death. Didn't we already prove that dream wasn't accurate 5 years ago? Stop overthinking things. But I just lowered my head in despair, my heart aching intensely. The dream wasn't inaccurate. In fact, it was far too accurate. Even the distance that bullet was from Zixi's heart was almost exactly the same as in the dream. Then, fighting back my overwhelming emotions, I completely revealed every single detail I knew from that terrifying nightmare. After hearing everything, the shock in Xiao Zero's eyes was completely indescribable. The people in the dream matched up perfectly with reality. Even the trajectory of many events was basically identical. Don't tell me the shooting really was connected to Xie Muya. Is that why she would target Zixi and the Xiao family? Even though the police had previously determined that Xie Muya had nothing to do with the shooting, honestly, Xiao Zero still felt a lingering sense of suspicion. The timing of Xie Muya's appearance was just far too coincidental. Just like Li Yuanyuan had said, Xie Muya was the only person who had the motive to ruin the wedding and murder Zixi. Then Xiao Zero looked at me with deep concern. Have you told Zixi about this dream? I shook my head, my tone incredibly calm and detached. I have no intention of dragging Zixi into this. Hearing this, Xiao Zero looked completely bewildered. But Zixi is your wife. If Xie Muya really is targeting us, how could you possibly not drag Zixi into it? There is still a choice. We haven't registered our marriage yet, and the wedding ceremony was only half finished. Hearing those words, Xiao Zero nearly spat out the coffee she had just taken a sip of. What? What do you mean? Are you trying to break up with Zixi? If it weren't for me, Zixi wouldn't have been hurt at all in this shooting. I cannot gamble with her life anymore. Seeing that Xiao Zero remained silent, I spoke again, my expression dead serious. Sister, I want to go to the capital. I'm going to find Xie Muya. That is the only way to change the ending of the dream. Absolutely not. Xiao Zero's face instantly darkened, rejecting the idea outright. I understand that you don't want to implicate Su Zixi, but forget about going to the capital. Dad and I will figure something out regarding this situation. But I slammed my hands on the table and stood up. Sister, I'm not asking for your permission. I am informing you. This left Xiao Zero completely stunned. This was the very first time she had ever been so thoroughly ignored by her younger brother. Over the next few days, Su Zixi was incredibly busy with company matters, so she couldn't stick to her husband all day. But right at that time, Li Yuanyuan frantically rushed into the office. Zixi, the shooting case might not be that simple. The relationship between Xie Muya and Cheng Wu is far more complicated than we thought. Su Zixi tilted her head, looking at Li Yuanyan in confusion. Didn't Xie Muya and her sister, Xie Qiulin, get kicked out by the Shi family back then? Xie Muya didn't really have any assets to her name, but over the years, Cheng Wu has used all sorts of aggressive tactics in secret, and he actually managed to seize back quite a lot of the Xie family's assets for her. The reason Xie Muya resigned and returned to the capital was supposedly to fight the Xie family to the bitter end. At this point, the expression on Li Yuanyan's face became incredibly complicated. But guess what happened? After Xie Muya was released by the police and returned to the capital, the very first thing she did was sell off every single piece of real estate under her name. She even went to the Xie family to negotiate, offering to sell all her Xie family shares to them. She is completely giving up her right to compete for the Xie family inheritance. When Cheng Wu heard about this, he was absolutely furious. He sent his men to forcefully stop her. Hearing this, Su Zixi casually picked up a document. Why would Xie Muya sell off her real estate? Li Yuanyuan anxiously wrung her hands. I don't know.